Hello, everyone. We are here for our board meeting tonight on December 16th. We're going to call the meeting to order, and we'll do a verification of the quorum. Greg, are you here, Vice Chair?
Greg's present.
Thank you. Christy, are you present?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael, are you present?
Present.
Thank you very much. And Ken, are you present?
It's not Ken Howard, it's Ken Thompson.
Oh.
Well, that answers that question. Christy, were you trying to reach out to Ken earlier? Did you have any success?
I had him on the phone and he said he was having difficulty. He was going to keep trying, but there's a chance he won't be able to join us.
Okay. Okay. Mark, I'll take your guidance at this point. Should I just continue on?
Yeah, yes, Todd, I think you can. You know, if Trustee Howard joins us, then we will see it and address it then.
With the four of us, we still constitute a quorum, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm hopeful that everybody's had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions, any comments on the minutes as posted from the last meeting? Anybody? All right, if hearing none, we'll accept the minutes as presented. We do have some folks signed up for public comment. Shannon has emailed me. Shannon, are you going to kind of operate as a gatekeeper? Do you want me to call out a name and then you'll unmute them, or how do you want to do this?
If they need me to unmute them, then I will. They should be able to do it themselves, but make sure I can find them first. Let's just give it a shot, Todd. Why don't you call on the first person and we'll see how it goes.
All right, that'll be fine. Thank you. All right, let's see. What do we got here? I've got one's going to be regarding the current mask policy. It's Ann Hart, I believe. Ann, are you available? Oops, wait a minute. Let's see, hold on. Shannon, what do you, let's see. I have the two emails, Shannon. Who else should I see for the public comment? I don't know that I have a list of the names. Let's see here. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Enrique Barajas, is that correct? Enrique? Mr. Barajas? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. All right, well, we'll give that a moment. I also had another gentleman by the name of Matt Armstrong. Mr. Armstrong, are you available? Okay. Shannon, I'm open to suggestions at this point. Do we think we have them? We just can't hear them, possibly?
Well, I don't see any unusual phone numbers online that I don't recognize.
Okay.
Hey, Todd, this is Tony. I put myself on a list, but I'm not sure if I got in. This is Tony Mohammed.
Well, you know what, Tony, I know who you are, and so I'm comfortable with allowing you to speak, sir. Why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Excuse me, real
Okay,
quick,
well,
Mr. Chair, can I get the full name, please?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
Tony, would you give Shannon your full name, please?
Yeah, Tony Mohammed. I'm alumni of NIC, National All-American, National Champion for North Idaho College for Wrestling. And sent you email earlier, but I'm not sure if you got it. I asked to be on the public speaking comment.
I did not get that email, but Mr. Chair,
And I sent it later this afternoon, but yeah, I asked to be added,
You know what?
included, and
Tony, I think that would be okay if you spoke. You may be the only one, so appreciate you taking the interest in the college and reaching out. So why don't you go ahead?
well, maybe
You got a couple
I
minutes.
can speak on behalf of Matt Armstrong anyways. He's a good friend of mine as well, and maybe he can make it. Well, can I speak now, or is it?
Yeah,
Let me interrupt for a minute, please.
Why don't you go
I
ahead,
think it's
partner?
important to know. Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that public comment is only for things that, items that are on the agenda. And as
He's
you
going to
mentioned
speak to
athletics,
athletics, I'm pretty sure, Mark.
I assume this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important that when people comment that they say which agenda item they're talking about, so that we understand that. So this is on
Certainly.
athletics. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I
Go
didn't
ahead.
get the agenda, but I'm sure it's probably covered with the COVID and athletics. Well, first of all, I want to thank Todd for being such a great ambassador for the community. He's been a great friend, and he's been a great ambassador for this community, not only for athletics, but just as a person and for the community college as well, for the benefit of this community. Well, anyways, I just want to comment on a couple of things. Is that I'm alumni. As I said, I was a national champion for North Idaho College, and after North Idaho College, we had a really good, successful year, and it basically haven't competed at North Idaho College. It opened a lot of doors for me and for many of my teammates, which many of them move on to great colleges and, became successful in their personal life and in their college career as well. So I was just a little bit concerned about, I was very concerned about North Idaho College wrestling program. And I think it's a great asset for this community. And we have successful high schools, successful high school programs in this community that actually look up to North Idaho College. We have Post Falls High School is a powerhouse in North Idaho State. We have 3 high schools here that are very successful. I think last year they placed all top 5 in the state of Idaho. And I think a lot of it has to be attributed to North Idaho College program because of the quality of individuals that we bring here from our community and from out of state. And it's just a great asset for this community. And seeing them not compete, it's been really difficult for this community, especially for the young athletes that are actually look up to these athletes that are in college. And just from what I understand, there's a question that they might not have a season this year. And I think it would be devastating for the athletes if they don't compete, which means that they would not be recognized on a national level. They're not part of NWAC. And I think NJAC is continue to have a season this year. And from what I understand, that North Idaho College might not have a season. So, and there's a lot of people that are concerned. I'm one of them, of course, that are concerned about North Idaho wrestling program, that they would have a successful year and successful season, at least to give an exposure to some of the athletes that we have here. And some of the athletes that we brought here are actually very talented. And I think they can show their skills on a national level so they can be recognized and move on and have a career and have a life and it's just very important. Also, for the high school athletes all three high schools here in Coeur d'Alene, they all practicing right now. They're having their season, and would like to bring them to see the college level wrestling. And right now, they actually deprive of that opportunity to actually be exposed to a high level athletics that we have here in this community, and it's been a great asset for this community. Anyways, I can name multiple reasons that that we should have a season. Just as a part of the community, I just want to express my concerns if the North Idaho College decide to cancel the season at the same time where other colleges that are competing against us and they're recruiting against North Idaho College, it would just be a blow to the program. That's pretty much some of the bullet points that I just want to point out that is very important to keep in mind. That's basically how I wanted to express from myself.
Tony,
Yeah.
Tony, this is Todd. Well, I just want to tell you, I appreciate your interest, and I know you've been engaged in the program, and you've worked in the room and been a practice partner and helped as a volunteer coach, and so I know your heart is about the kids in the program. So I just want to let you know I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Very important as an alumni, and that you still stay connected to the college. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I always will be. It's part of my heart, and it's what helped me in my life. And the little thing I can do is just pay back. That's
Appreciate that.
I've been coaching high school as well, and high school kids. We have actually in Post Falls High School, which I think we probably have a very good chance to win another state championship title. And we have 3 kids on the team that are actually really considering to go to North Idaho. But if the way it's being
Well, it's tough. I know in the past sometimes we've had some of the NIC wrestlers at the high schools assisting too, where they go out there and work with the kids and get in their room.
They have been. They've been very involved in the community. The NIC wrestlers have been involved in the community, and they've been great assets for the community. And having a successful program has been a great asset. I think it's very important for us, even just for high school level, to be part of it. North Idaho College wrestling, NIC College wrestling, has been a great asset for this community, and them not having a season, it would be a big blow to the program. That's just the only thing I can say.
Good question.
All right. Well, appreciate that, Tony. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming
Mr.
on and
Chairman,
sharing. And I'm sorry, who's that?
That's Mark. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I was gonna move on to the next person. I think Tony had said what he wanted. I noticed that Mr. Barajas looks like he has joined us, so I wanted to give him an opportunity if I could.
Certainly, but can I say something first? I just want to
Certainly, please.
I just want to remind everybody that this is not a public meeting. It is a business meeting of the Board of Trustees. It takes place where the public can watch. The board does allow some public comment, and there was a question earlier about can anybody speak? And the short answer to that is generally no. If you're going to ask for public comment, that request must be made to the president's office, and subjects that you want, by a certain time. I don't know, Shannon has that time, but it's not a meeting with the public here during this meeting. Now, those that have made the request and identified the topics that they're going to speak on that is related to the agenda, then they are vetted at that time. And if they're not related to an agenda item, then it's not an appropriate public comment. And generally, I should say this, public comment is usually limited to about 2 minutes. And they're, you
Yeah,
know, maybe.
and that's my bad. I let Tony probably talk a little bit long. I think, and the reason I allowed Tony to speak is it sounds like he made a good faith effort to try to get the information to be allowed to speak. So probably my fault on that, Mark. Enrique, we'll probably try to hold more to the 2 minutes. Would you do me a favor, sir? Please announce yourself with your name and the topic from tonight's agenda that you will be addressing with your public comment.
Okay, yes. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Enrique Barajas. I'm going to be speaking on NIC athletics. I'm a middle school coach here in Oregon. My family and I are longtime supporters of NIC athletics, and that's what I wanted to speak on today. If the NWAC or NJCAA have seasons, I really do hope to watch NIC athletics participate in those seasons. I know Oregon and Washington schools are in a tough spot, yet they are still finding ways for their student athletes to train and compete. Some community colleges down here actually put their whole team online and plan to move to another state for 6 weeks, while another is going to an Indian reservation to train. They're just finding ways to train, compete, and also provide a good student athlete experience. And that is something, you know, that I really respect. I think community colleges are supposed to be representations of their communities. It says so in the name community college. If high school athletics is happening in Idaho and they're allowed to train on campus, as well as attend competitions, you know, I'm wondering why I have yet to see a scrimmage at North Idaho College. I know there is a new normal and we hold student athletes to a higher standard than the regular student body, but my understanding is that protocols were put in place to help catch and prevent the spread of COVID, and with daily screening and temperature tests, you know, as well as mask wearing and social distancing. You know, just to close up here, North Idaho College has a chance to be a leader in the Pacific Northwest, you know, for the youth and for high school athletes that hope to be collegiate student athletes one day. I understand if something is out of your guys' control and the NWAC or NJCAA cancel their season, you know, then your guys' hands are tied. However, if either one of those organizations are allowing competitions, I really hope to see the Cardinals participating. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate you guys, you know, taking time to listen.
Thank you, Mr. Bras. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Really appreciate your input and your interest in the program here. And good luck to you this year also, sir.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
One thing I do want to mention in addition, we had other folks that wanted to participate in the conversation tonight. So there were a couple of emails that were submitted. One was regarding the mask policy by an Ann Hart, and she had a number of points that she made. Thought that we could make some adjustments there. She was not in support of the current policy. Also got an email from one of the other local wrestling coaches regarding the athletics. I just want to mention it briefly. Coach Moffitt from Coeur d'Alene High School, just again was supporting us. Even sent a letter. They have a form that they're using. It's called an athlete coach monitoring form. It's the procedures and the protocols that they're following at the high school level for the local athletes to be able to compete. So he shared that information with us and encouraged us to do whatever we could to have a season, you know, bearing in mind the reality of the COVID and the seriousness of it. But yet, again, as Mr. Barajas just talked about being creative and innovative and doing what we can to continue to work in a positive direction and so with our student athletes. So anyway, just want to mention that because we did have a couple of emails that came in, and those folks don't appear to be on the call. So I think that's it for public comment. Shannon, if I missed anything on that.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That brings us to celebrating success. We're going to have Kai Settlemeyer from the Aznic. They were scheduled previously, I believe it was last month, and they were moved to this month. So with no further ado, Kai, it's your time. Talk to us.
Wonderful. I'm going to introduce Kai here today, and thank you for the time on the agenda. My name is Dodie Stilke. I work here at North Idaho College and serve as the Director of Student Involvement and Sub Operations. I'm also an NIC alum from a long time back, and more recently taught economics here for a few years and worked as a writing consultant in our writing center. started working full-time here in 2015 and more recently took on the awesome part of my job is advising and supporting our Aznic student government. I just wanted to give you a little overview. Our Aznic student government meets as a group every Tuesday for 2 hours. We have 10 officer spots in that group. We host a formal board meeting every fourth Tuesday at noon that we always welcome public and guests and constituents to. And the students that serve on the board are held to a very high expectation. They sit on at least 3 standing committees on campus while working 6 to 8 hours a week for a regular officer position, and then 8 to 10 hours a week, and often many more. I'm looking at Kai over on my screen here. For the executive team, for our president, vice president, and president pro tem. The group started this fall with some challenges, obviously, but a very strong foundation because of the diligent work the prior student government developed new updated revisions to constitutions and bylaws, revised their student club handbook, revised their grant application and guidelines for club funding to more mimic real world grant applications. And then the current president and vice president of Aznic carried on some of that work through the summer. So they started off very strong. We have been mostly working in a virtual environment. We also held fall elections for the first time where we had saved 3 open senator seats. So folks could have an opportunity if they weren't here in spring to actually run for student government. The student government signed a cardinal pledge to keep campus safe early on in spring to encourage wearing masks and social distancing and hand washing to try to keep everybody safe. We also had the student government develop some new roles within their structure, including scribe, a treasurer position, project coordinator, a marketing coordinator, and while on hold, we still hope to develop a new position under volunteer and community engagement. We've also brought a marketing consultant from the Coeur d'Alene area in for the Aznic student government group, not only to develop a marketing plan for them, but to actually teach some of the structure, tasks, and function of a real world marketing plan. So that's been very useful. The simple goal is to engage more students and to develop avenues to get information out about North Idaho College and opportunities to engage. The students did a survey last fall, and with over 200 responses, had quite a time of working through and facilitating those priorities for student government. They are working on improving quality and environments of our classrooms, providing more seating outdoors for students, looking at touch-free hand water dispensers across campus, and trying to facilitate more opportunities to serve students better in the bookstore and through our wayfinding. And some of the more fun projects, they're looking to paint the seawall near our outdoor pursuits rental area on the North Idaho College beach. And are working to see if we can do some art-based wraps on our electrical sign boxes across campus to just make the campus more welcoming. One of our favorite things we try to do as a group, and one of Kai's passions, is to encourage people to be civic-minded and vote. So that was a really fun push this fall to encourage people to vote, not only in local elections and state elections, but obviously in our federal elections as well. We've done a lot of work with our clubs. Even though we've been in a virtual environment, we've had many clubs active. We've started 3 new clubs, and we have thought a little bit outside the box and created some innovation challenges so clubs can get involved and share some of their best practices that they've been doing to stay engaged in our virtual environment. And we're currently running a photo contest for clubs. The Student Events Board that is sponsored through our student government has had a challenging time, but they brought a virtual escape room, virtual magic show, and many other opportunities to students. One of our great projects that I loved was our bringing the campus community together to create a Cardinal cookbook. So let us know if you'd like one of those. And this holiday season, we had our annual St. Aznic event and helped over 40 families, provided gifts and food baskets to needy families here on campus through the support of our campus community. We had professional developments like mental health first aid and a 2-part series provided to our student government on emotional EQ that was facilitated by Gonzaga University School of Leadership Studies. And with no further ado, all this work has been heralded by our own President Kai Settlemeyer. Her prior roles have included serving as Aznic Vice President last year and assisting in serving clubs to enable them to be successful. She's been instrumental in encouraging that civil engagement we talked about and works to rock the vote as much as possible. She was also very instrumental in developing the job descriptions that we have brought to the roles of Aznic with project manager, marketing, and the like. Her work with the student government this year has been instrumental in creating connections and providing leadership in our mostly virtual environment. So President Settlemeyer, welcome.
Thank you, Dodie. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. As you know from the introduction, I'm Kai Settlemeyer, the current Aznic president. I am a pre-law and journalism double major set to graduate in the spring, and I am from the Coeur d'Alene area. Aznic has been especially impactful to me as an individual because prior to my involvement, I didn't have a lot of leadership experience at all. And thanks to this amazing opportunity, I've been able to grow and develop my confidence in my abilities and do great things like help revise our governing documents and talk to campus stakeholders about the best interests of our students and try to create the best environment I can for our peers. This has changed my life for the better, and I couldn't be more thankful, and it has really deepened my love and passion for the NIC community. You all are a little familiar with me because of my monthly reports, so that is all I have to say about myself. And now we have a few videos from some officers who were unable to make it to the meeting today.
I see that we can't hear. Can anybody hear her?
Can't hear her, Dodie.
Shannon,
That's what I thought. Let me
do
check.
we have her muted, or does she need to check her
Well, no,
mute?
this is a video, Todd, so it's just not set up for audio.
Got it. Whoever's playing it, I guess, is what I mean, is whoever's the mute.
Oh.
Yep,
Maybe
let me
that's it.
try one other thing. Give me 1 minute here and I'll try an alternative method. It was working just fine a moment ago, as is typical with IT, right? So hold on just a moment.
You know, technology is your friend until it's not. This is how it usually works, right? It checked out perfectly.
Jody, did you see Teresa's chat?
I did not, but I will take a look. I've got it set up here in
Be
two
sure to-
different forms to try to get working, but I've got a,
Be sure to click the audio button on the screen that shows the screens you can share.
well, I'm not sure about that, but I may send the link to Shannon. She may have better luck with it here. But yeah, let me see if, yep, I did have it set up in two different ways. But let's, we're gonna pause on that and I'm gonna try to share it at just a little later time so we don't have to wait on that.
Dodie, if you get that working, I'm sorry, this is Todd. Just let me know and we can try to slip that in as we go.
Thank you, will do.
You bet.
I think we may be able to try it one more time here, and if not, we'll have to leave it for later and share it out to the group.
Chair Banducci, I see one of our guests has her hand raised and may have some information. Michelle Lippert.
Oh, okay. Yes, please. Go ahead. What do you think, Rick?
Michelle, I see that you raised your hand. I don't know if that's unintentional or if you meant to do that, but if you unmute and wanted to offer something, you can do so.
I want to let everyone know, I did just share that, Shannon, with you. You may have different permissions than I have because it plays fine, but not through Zoom here for me. And I also shared it with Steve Smith just in case he was on the call. Sorry for that technical difficulty.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen,
Nope.
Dodie?
All right, Dodie, would you want us to go ahead and just move on at this time, or did you have anything
Yeah, I think
else?
so. Clearly something's happening when I'm actually through Zoom. It's not giving the video out. The video runs, but not with sound, and it's not muted from my end. So it's beyond my brainstorming here, but we may be able, if Shannon thinks she can access it, or Steve Smith, if he's here on the call, that'd be wonderful. But we are going to have to move on. I don't have any tips or
Okay.
tricks.
Well,
Usually they just
you-
play for me.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, Dodie, why don't you go ahead and kind of work that offline and see if you can get someone that can assist you with that.
You bet.
At this time, thank you. And just let us know. Why don't we go ahead and move on to the constituent reports. We're back to Kai with the Aznic report at this time.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Mark Lyons. I wonder if I could make
Yes.
a comment. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir, please.
yeah, thank you. So people are using the chat function of this to discuss why some people were allowed to public comment and some people were not. The answer to that is, yes, you do have to present your questions in advance, but also the questions are evaluated, and the board policy requires that the public comment session is available for comments that are related to an issue that is on the agenda. And we did review, and I personally reviewed some of them, and there may be disagreement, but not all requests were related to an agenda item. So let's just make that clear. And again, just want to remind everybody that this is a business meeting of the Board of Trustees. It is not a public meeting. The purpose of this is not to meet and take questions and have discussions with the public at large. So I hope that clarifies things. We'll try to smooth this out a little bit better for the next meeting so that we can address some misunderstandings on the front end a little earlier. So my apologies for that, but that's the situation we're in. Thank you.
Well, there's probably one mea culpa on me. I did take the liberty as board chair after it was made aware to me that Tony had attempted to communicate and send an email and to get himself on the list to speak, that I made the judgment call that he had made a good faith effort and that he wanted to just speak to the athletics and the wrestling, which I did not feel would be controversial. So I did allow him as an alumni to have a moment to speak on behalf of the wrestling program. So that's on me. So if there's a problem there, that's on me. I made that call. So hopefully not to offend anybody else or exclude anybody else. Kai, are you prepared for your remarks?
Yes, I am. Can everyone hear me?
You bet. Why don't you go ahead and proceed, please?
Great, thank you. Aznic has been working on crafting a response to the student survey that we sent out earlier this semester, and we planned on sending out an email to all students letting them know what we've noticed and are working on, including quality in the classroom, seating on campus, and better navigation such as grab-and-go maps and signs accessible for visually impaired students. One of our senators has been working with disability support services to get tactile signs on campus that will be beneficial for everyone to use, and they should be getting installed soon. Very excitingly, our vice president has been working on getting reusable masks ordered for students to be distributed on campus in the spring semester, and we are still ironing out the finer details of where and how these masks will be distributed. But the plan is to order 1,000 of them with the phrase Cardinal Strong on them and get them out to as many students as possible to encourage health and safety practices and keep everyone motivated. We've also continued to meet with our marketing consultant, as Dodie mentioned in the presentation, and we have developed a social media calendar to best maximize our presence on social media. If you are at all interested in keeping up with our activities, you can find us on Facebook at Aznic Student Government and on Instagram at North Idaho College Aznic. We are really hoping to get engaged with the students and make sure that they know what we're doing so we are as accessible to them as possible. So I'm very excited to see where that takes us. And as a whole, we are very excited to move forward in the spring semester strong and make even further headway on these projects and campaigns, and continuing to engage with our peers as much as possible to support them through their college experience in this very trying time. So that is a little short, but that is my report for this month. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kai. I appreciate that. Chris Pelchat, are you prepared at this time?
I am.
Thank you, sir. Would you proceed?
Sure. Chair Banducci, fellow members of the board, President McLennan, and everyone else gathered here today. I have a report from the faculty assembly for you. It's short. I'll keep it to the point here. We spent the first couple minutes approving November minutes. We had a report from the Senate and the Chair of Assembly, myself. We covered some old business. Back in April, we passed a resolution about marketing, and we're probing the Communications and Marketing Office to do some work on enrollment. We revisited that resolution and wanted to reprobe the Communications and Marketing Office and get some information about some of the stuff that they're working on to promote spring enrollment. And I got a lot of information from Laura Rumpler yesterday that I plan to report back to the Assembly about those efforts. She provided very thorough information for me on that. Underneath new business, we had the tenure procedure up for discussion due to some revisions that were made on that document from a committee. Those were discussed and the document was approved to move forward to the Senate for review. I also provided an update on the first year experiences task force and the formation of some subcommittees affiliated with that group, and solicited interest in serving the college on those subcommittees. Then we moved to remarks of good of the order. And we had an advising update presented to us by Kathleen Miller-Green. And then we also had some key members of the faculty introduce some events that were coming up for the campus. And then we adjourned. And that's it. Any questions from the board for me?
Any questions for Chris? Hearing none. Chris, thank you for that report from Faculty Assembly. The next on our list is Staff Assembly. Jeff Davis, if you would proceed, sir.
Thank you so much. Chair Banducci, trustees, President McLennan, counselor, President's Cabinet, and colleagues and guests. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. Our staff assembly meeting was held quite recently in December. We had our usual housekeeping call to order, approval of minutes and such. We always do new employee introductions, which are fun. And we announce our Sterling Silver winner of the month, who was Jamie Baruvi, who is the Administrative Assistant for Advising Services. We caught her quite unaware. She thought that she was meeting with her boss on a one-on-one meeting and was greeted with well over a dozen folks who came to congratulate her on her win for Sterling Silver Employee of the Month. We had our usual guest speakers. We had a gentleman by the name of Dr. Rick McLennan come and speak to us. Always a delight to have our president available to talk to us and update us on what's going on in his world, as well as the wider world of the North Idaho College campus. And it was an excellent conversation. We also had Steve Kurtz, who is not only our man for the accreditation piece, but also for the Senate report. And Steve gave us a very nice talk on accreditation and how we are rolling forward in the changes that come in accreditation every cycle that we have. After that, it was our typical reports from the Senate, President's Advisory Council, good of the order, and we adjourn the meeting. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Are there any questions for Jeff? Okay, not
Chair
hearing any.
Banducci, this is Chair Banducci. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is Dodie again. I think we've got the video solved if we want to take just 2.5, 3 minutes to watch our student video that they put together.
Well, that sounds great, Dodie. Actually, I was just going to say I noticed a little chat message from you and was going to see if you were prepared. So
Okay,
we're on
fingers crossed.
great minds thinking alike. Here we go. Let's go.
Great.
Hi, my name is Justine Lackner, and I'm the Vice President of the Aztec Student Government and the Lead Coordinator for the Student Events Board. Aztec has been doing incredible things this semester. We've been able to not only support kids across campus and at home, but also to support our clubs here on campus. It is my job to provide that support as Vice President through the virtual environment. We have offered the Innovation Challenge and the Club Photo Contest for them to keep pursuing that student engagement and provided a monetary compensation to their budget to the selected clubs. The Student Events Board has also provided the student engagement. We have created a Cardinal Cookbook, which not only included NIC students, but also included NIC employees. Just super awesome to see that all come together, and we're very proud of it. St. Aznic has also got to continue this year. We are in the midst of currently handing out those gifts to those families and those food baskets. Such a joy to do that, especially this time of the year in a pandemic, to continue doing that. We have also provided take-home kits. In the spring, we are looking to do a virtual concert and a TEDx event. I'm so excited to see what we're going to do in the spring, because we're just going to continue doing greater things for our students and our community.
Hi, I'm Hannah Neff, Aztec Senator from Gulf Falls. I'm a journalism and photography double major and managing editor of the Sentinel. This semester, I've been working on the Rose Garden project, in which we are working on plans to add to the beauty of the garden, which honors Native American culture on campus, as well as provide more outdoor seating options for students, especially with the COVID restrictions this year. I enjoy being involved with Aznic because it gives me a chance to be actively involved in initiating change and improvement on campus.
Hi everyone, this is Marion Soderberg, and I live in Sandpoint and am going to school for my mathematics degree. I serve as the president pro tempore on Aznic, and this semester I was able to complete a survey that went out to all students at NIC asking where they would like to see improvements or maybe additions that would help their student success. With those responses that were over 200, we are able to create a lot of projects that remedy or create solutions for some of the things laid out by those responses. And together we can work with an institution to be able to serve students better. Aznic has been an incredible opportunity for me to be able to work on my professionality and my project management and leadership skills, and it has created a safe environment for me to do so. I have loved seeing how Aznic has impacted the individuals at NIC and is continuing to work to create an even better campus and institution than we already have.
Thank you for that time.
Oh, you bet. That was wonderful. Nice to get to meet them. Some real bright lights there. Excellent. Yeah. We're going to be very successful. Steve, I appreciate your patience. Dodie, if you're done, I'm going to move on to the Senate and to Steve Kurtz. Steve, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Would you proceed?
Thank you, Chair Banducci. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. McLennan, colleagues, students, and guests. The College Senate met the day after the board's regular meeting last month and passed, I'll share my screen here, 2 board policies that are under consideration by the board tonight under new business: 3.09, evaluation of supervisors, and 3.0222, employee development. The Senate typically does not meet in December. So next month, we will consider under old business, second reading, bereavement policy 3.040101, second reading, and under new business, leave without pay. And then also the Senate will be taking under consideration the revision of the Constitution and bylaws. We are looking at the position of corresponding secretary. This is a little bit out of date. And then also there's a few senators that thought that we could modify language to reflect current practice. So that concludes my report, sir.
Thank you very much, Steve. Are there any questions for Steve, please? All right. Hearing none, why don't we move on to the President's report? Rick, are you ready?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Okay.
Banducci. Evening, everybody. I'm going to just make my comments very brief. First, I want to acknowledge the reports of the constituent leaders and Kai and the Aznic student government leaders. Each of these, the constituent leaders and including Aznic in their celebrating success report, are key members of our college community and key part of our governance structure. And I think you can just get a good idea from some of the things that you heard this evening, how important they believe their work is and how engaged they are with the college community. And I just want to acknowledge that and let them know that it is much appreciated. When we began the fall semester, well, I'll go before the fall semester, as we were leading up to the fall semester, we had a lot of questions. One of the biggest questions were are we going to make it through week 1? And we're now in finals week, and I am very pleased to say that we made it through the semester. I probably challenging the gods right now by saying that we have a couple more days of finals left, but it looks like we're going to make it through the fall semester. And what a lot of people may not recognize is the incredible work, planning and organization and problem solving on the part of dozens of people throughout the college. Some have worked weekends, over holiday breaks. Just to give you one example, we have about 20 or so individuals who are involved in our contact tracing efforts. The contact tracing that North Idaho College is doing is probably one of the most elaborate versions of that type of work in the state of Idaho right now, certainly at a college or university. And so the behind the scenes work with our custodial crew, our ground crew, the creativity of the faculty, if I were to put a word on what's defined this semester, it truly has been innovation. We have come together as a college. We had a slogan at the beginning of the college that was "Together we will." We even made a T-shirt, "Together we will." And I'm very proud to say that everybody in this institution bought into that. And it's through the efforts, the collective efforts of everybody, including our students. Our students were champions in helping this work. We made it through the fall semester, and I'm confident that as we gear up and begin planning for the spring semester, we'll be equally prepared. And so I just want the board to understand and know how much effort has gone into making this work on everybody's part. A lot of innovation. And I think I'll just conclude my report there. That's really all I wanted to say this evening. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. Board, does anybody have any questions? All right. Hearing none, we're going to move to old business. We'll start with tab 1. That'll be Beth Ann Fuller for the Head Start program. Now, this is going to be a second reading, and so it's an action item. Beth Ann, you've briefed us with an initial reading. What do you want to present with us this second reading? I guess I'm giving you license to tell us how much you want to tell us or not this second time, because I'm going to suspect not much has changed since the first reading. So I'll leave it to your discretion what you want to present here.
Chair Banducci, thank you for this opportunity. And there is no change to what we presented last meeting. And so this would just be an opportunity if anyone had a question or had any other comments that weren't already made for the first reading in terms of approving our policy council bylaws and our self-assessment process.
Board, does anybody have any questions? Or Rick, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Christy.
I'll make a motion to approve the Head Start Policy Council bylaws and self-assessment process.
Thank you. Do I have someone that will second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion now that we have a second? Okay, it doesn't appear that there's any. We will take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. There's just the 4 of us. It sounds like it was unanimous, 4-0 on the ayes. Beth Ann, it looks like everything's approved and passed.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You have a wonderful holiday. All right. We're going to move on to tab 2. Be the second reading, again, an action item, be regarding the Meyer Health and Sciences building expansion. Chris Martin will take the lead on that. Chris, if you proceed.
Chair Banducci, members of the board, we are coming tonight requesting permission to move forward with the Meyer Health and Science expansion project. Happy to stand for questions. I would like to thank all the board members for their engagement in the board workshop that we had on this topic, and I just wanted to open it up for questions if that's the will of the board.
Are there any questions for Chris from anyone? Now, Chris, if I may. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christy. Do you have a question?
No question, Mr. Chair. Just reviewing that we did have a workshop on this, and I do feel we had a lot of time to ask questions and have them answered at that time. So I would make a motion to approve the Meyer Health Science expansion and look for a second.
All right. Do I have a second?
Might I say something before we say that?
If you do the second, Greg, then we'll have discussion on it, because I have something I would want to say also.
All right, I'll second it.
All right. It's now open for discussion. Greg, why don't you go ahead and start?
Did I miss an estimate of a cost of a future building if the Aero program were to head that direction? Did I miss that in the options that were provided in there?
Chair Banducci and Trustee McKenzie, we have not priced out a new building for the aerospace program. We did seek grant funding for a partnership project that would have provided space for the aerospace program on the airport facility as part of an EDA grant.
As in within the last year you're talking, as in moving forward since the pause, I mean, because this relates to if we're spending money from our capital investment fund, you got to kind of plan ahead for multiple years and multiple purchases, if that's needed.
Chair
Chris,
Banducci,
you wanna-
I apologize. I'm not sure if I understood the question.
Well, here's how I'm understanding it, and Greg, clarify if I'm mistaking this. I think Greg is referencing our overall capital budget and looking at the amounts that we're adding it on an annual basis, looking at the subtraction for the amount that we may be earmarking to the Meyer Health and Science Building. Then would that give us enough funds should we be interested in moving forward with an aerospace building? And so, although aerospace is showing us tab 6, I think Trustee McKenzie is kind of seeing these issues as linked as far as maybe we have a limited budget. And if we're thinking of one capital project, what will that do in effect to allow us for other future capital projects, maybe one of which is being the aerospace program? Greg, am I capturing that correctly?
Well put, Todd. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Chair Banducci and Trustee McKenzie, as we are estimating that we will have approximately $13 million in the capital reserve fund at the end of this fiscal year. And we are requesting to use approximately $8 million of that for the Meyer Health Science Building. So there would be additional funds available for another project after Meyer Health and Sciences.
And Chris, if I may, to clarify, that leaves us, if I'm understanding what you just said with the numbers, approximately a $5 million plus balance there approximately. And then when would be the next annual infusion, which is in excess of $2 million? Could you speak to that?
Yes, sir. Chair Banducci, Trustee McKenzie, we receive approximately $1.25 million, both in the early part of the calendar year and then again in July. And so that $13 million that we referenced anticipates that other $1.25 million infusion for this fiscal year, and then we would get another one at the beginning of next fiscal year.
Thank you for clarifying. I was counting both those as one over the year, but that's a good way to explain it. Thank you. Greg, Trustee McKenzie, does that answer the question there about what would be a remaining or residual balance after this project? Should there be another project that would be of interest?
It helps. It's good enough.
Okay. Well, if you want, we can revisit that again when we get down to the aerospace program discussion in tab 6 as we talk about that a little bit. Now, one thing I did want to do, and Christy, you did bring this up, so thank you. I was going to mention that we did have the workshop, and I think we had a lot of good input there and a lot of good information. One of the things right now is we have a range that we're looking at, and Chris, please correct me if I misspeak, but this is for the benefit and the edification of everybody else that's on the call. And I think there's 50 plus people on the call, and we're looking at making a sizable capital investment here in the campus and in the programs to support more than just nursing. We think of nursing, but there's a lot of programs we'll be impacting here with the lab space and the classroom space that we'll be adding. Is that we've got a range of dollars, and Mr. Young, John Young, is assisting us, and we're going to go out, we're going to try to put this out there and get some bids on this and see where the numbers come back in the current environment and what the building costs are going to be. There's a little uncertainty, and obviously it's been an interesting environment, but we think that we're capturing a favorable window for the bidding process and for the timing of it, that A, contractors will be available, and B, they'll want the work, and C, they'll hopefully work with us on the cost. Am I capturing that correctly, Chris?
Yes, sir. We have a maximum allowable construction budget for this project of $7.47 million. And so we would anticipate bids. We're hoping to get a favorable environment where it's less than that dollar amount.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And what would be the timeline for those of when we would, if we approve it tonight, when would that hit the street, and when would we expect to have bids back?
So we will, with approval tonight, immediately work with the architect to develop the bid package and take that to bid. It would go to bid in the month of January, and we would anticipate having a sealed bid by mid-February at the latest.
And I guess probably the last question that would probably jump out to most folks is, when would construction hopefully commence, and what would be our anticipated completion date?
So we would anticipate starting construction, honestly, as soon as the weather permits this spring to start the project, with anticipated completion date, not of this coming fall, but the following fall semester. So one full academic year, this will be under construction.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, fall of, what would that be, 2022
Sir.
then?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Appreciate the additional information there. Are there any other questions from any of the trustees, or from you, Rick, or any other comments or anything to add to this?
Chair Banducci, I don't have anything to add.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a motion. We have a second. I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of approving, please say aye.
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 I also say aye. The vote is carried 4-0 and passed. The motion. Chris, let's move forward and do great things.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Pretty exciting. I suspect everybody in the nursing program just started clapping, so that's hopefully. All right, that concludes our old business, and we're going to move on to new business. We'll start with tab 3, which will be the first reading, also designated as an action item, for the revised policy 3.09, evaluation of supervisors. And Karen Hubbard will speak to that, please.
Good evening, Chair Banducci and trustees. Tonight, I'm bringing for a first reading 2 policies. The first is the policy on evaluation of supervisors, formerly the evaluation of administrators. And as this was updated as part of our ongoing process to review really all of our policies. And for this one, an ad hoc committee was convened actually before my time in my current position, and they began reviewing this policy. The draft that's presented here tonight reflects the product of their work and has been reviewed and approved by Human Resources, President's Cabinet, and as Steve Kurtz mentioned in his report, it was also approved by the College Senate. While there's no action requested tonight, as this is the first reading of this policy, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Board, are there any questions? All right, Karen, I don't hear any. We'll have some additional time to digest this and review it again before the second reading at the next meeting. So why don't you go ahead and proceed to the next, the 3.02.22, please.
Thank you. This next policy is on employee development. This policy was also reviewed by the ad hoc committee, the same one that was convened to review the previous policy. And the draft, again, reflects the product of their work and has been reviewed by Human Resources, President's Cabinet, and again, approved by the College Senate. On this one as well, I'm happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, we will move on and we'll wait to hear back from you at the next board meeting, Karen, for both those policies for the second reading.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item under new business is tab 5. This is a first reading action item. It's the board member general conduct policy 2.01.10. Bringing up this policy tonight for review, and I'm opening it up to the board for anyone that has any comments at this time.
Mr. Chair, I am just wondering what we're reviewing. We passed the policy. It's part of our policy manual. What is the purpose of our discussion?
Well, okay, well, I'm going to start off with comments then. I think it's unnecessary. I think it should be rescinded. I don't think we went through the proper process. No constituency groups other than the trustees got to weigh in on it or review it or have any input on it. I also think that as elected officials, we are accountable to the electorate. We come up for an election every 4 years, and if we're doing a good job, if we want to run again, we'll be voted in, and if not, we won't. There's no true statute or rule or law or anything that gives us any authority. So we're basically setting ourselves up to try to slap each other's wrists. And I just think it's unnecessary. And I've been in opposition to it from the inception. And so I've brought it back up. I think it also chills communication and conversation. There's language in there that basically denies the ability for people involved with the college, whether they be faculty, staff, students, to have communication or to talk to the trustees. I've heard some refer to this as the gag policy. I've heard some refer to this as the muzzle policy. We've even in our executive session, there was some discussion about trustees maybe having friendships with people engaged at the college, having relationships, having communication, talking about stuff. Everybody in this community, and certainly those that are members of the college community, are constituents of the trustees. You are taxpayers in some way, whether it be sales tax, property tax, income tax. So whether you're contributing, to the college through one of the legs of the three-legged stool, which is the property taxes, or whether you're doing it because it went down to the state in Boise and it's come back through the general fund or however it's been allocated. If you've paid a fee or a tax, whether it be income tax or sales tax or whatever else, you're supporting it, and that's obviously another leg of the three-legged stool, the part we get from the state, of course the third being tuition and fees. So I think it's very chilling when you start to have constraints on communication and the ability to talk to folks. Trustees represent the college. Everybody should be able to approach us, and we should be approachable. We should want to be approachable. So I just think it's unnecessary, and I think it hinders communication, and I think it potentially could put people at peril. And I think people get self-conscious that some sort of punitive action can be taken for them because they maybe talked to a trustee or had communication, and I just don't think that's appropriate. I want people to be comfortable. Again, we've talked about this, and I won't dive into some of what was in the executive session, but at any time where you have people afraid to talk to a trustee, I think that's unhealthy. We represent everybody, but clearly we represent the folks on campus there. I mean, the NIC family, we're the trustees. We're the board of directors, if you will. If this was a corporation, we'd be the board. Rick would be the CEO, and then we've got the COO and the CFO, and the basic corporate structure. Whether that be Graydon or Chris or Lita or whatever. And so as the representatives, is the quote public face, and we are accountable for the college. So I think everything's in place. If there's a problem, there's ethics laws, which or if you break the law, there's criminal laws. So we're held accountable in other ways. I just don't see the necessity of this policy, and I think it's actually a negative. And I think it distances us further from the community, and particularly the NIC community.
Mr. Chair,
that's my thoughts.
What I recall of us putting together the policy, it is a board policy, so you're correct. It doesn't go to constituent groups. It's directed only for the board. Only board decides what their policies will be. And if it's coming across as limiting public from speaking to the board, I think we could probably address some of those areas of concern, because absolutely people should not be afraid to speak to the Board of Trustees, except that we would encourage employees to follow their chain of command on college issues. But my recollection of putting this together was not really about communication with the public or with employees. It was really focused on our own conduct. And I'll tell you that I'm currently working with one of my fellow council members, and we have put together general guidelines for council conduct, and that was a request of the entire council. And it's really just about good conduct, because when you're a leader, you're expected to embrace good conduct. And so by putting that in place, we also had hoped that if any elected official, it's true, they are accountable to the electorate, but if any elected official acted outside of the scope of their duties with something horribly inappropriate, then the college, hopefully, if we have policy that all trustees are aware that you're outside the scope of your duties, that it would possibly shield us from litigation, or it certainly help if we were sued. We know that ICRIMP will not support a trustee or do the legal work for a trustee if they're outside of the scope of their duties. And so this is really put into place, in my mind, to protect the institution from litigation by, a trustee acting outside the scope of their duties in a way that's horribly inappropriate. So I don't want to throw out the whole policy. I would certainly be open to retooling it, look at the areas we can all agree on and what we can't agree on, but to just abandon it, to me, seems like we're advocating our leadership role.
Yeah, I would disagree, and I think the more you make the list, the less exhaustive it would be, and then you try to come up with every possible scenario, and I think all you end up doing is laying down more tripwires because you can't think of all the possible scenarios. If you look at this thing in the original discussion, it was like, well, we need to add that, or well, we need to consider this. Again, I think you open up Pandora's box, and I don't know where you know to stop, where you can try to capture all the possibilities. So again, my opinion is to not have it. Now, we're already having a discussion on this and there was no motion. So I'm going to step out and I'm just going to make a motion to rescind this policy. And then if there's a second, then we can continue discussion.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, I think I missed that comment. And Greg, that was you that seconded that?
Yeah, this is Greg McKenzie, seconding. I think it opens it up for further discussion.
It does, yes, thank you. Do you have some discussion on this, Greg?
I do. I'll lead.
Okay, go ahead.
I think Christy makes some good points, and I'm fully open to regenerating a new board conduct policy. But as I understand this and the rush job that this current policy went through, I'm not a fan of it, and I don't think it's meeting its intended goal to shield the college, and while still allowing the trustees to meet their mission. So
all right. Michael, do you have any comment on this by chance?
Yeah, to be transparent, in my first couple of readings of it, it was uncomfortable. It felt like it was an attempt to restrict the freedom of trustees that were elected by the general public. So there's a lot in it that I think is appropriate, but might be redundant to other laws that are already in place. So I would be in favor of maybe retooling some of the language that may be misunderstood, because as I reread some of the things that initially alarmed me, I think I understand what the intent was, but maybe the wording could be better.
All right, appreciate you sharing that. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I know you've motion and you have a second, and I guess I would ask you to amend your motion. I would like to see us work on this policy as a group of trustees and revisit and make sure that we still address proper conduct, but in the areas that it's uncomfortable for trustees, possibly we could strike some of that language.
You know, I don't know that I want to amend my motion at this time, but what I would be willing to do, because if I amend it, this thing is still in place. And the problem is I don't want it in place, and I don't want the conversation to be chilled. So I would not amend my motion, but I would agree to revisiting and starting over with it and with fresh new sets of eyes and see what everybody could be comfortable with and see what we could generate as a group with the new board composition. But no, I don't want to retain what we currently have. But again, I would be willing to look at it, and we would be doing it in kind of a different tone and tenor than the original. And so I would be open to that discussion and revisiting it. But right now, if it stays on the books, it's still in place, and until we can get to that point, it's still something that I think is a barrier. And there's language that concerns me, and I've talked to people in the campus community, and the language concerns them. So it's not singularly my concern. So I still think I would like to keep my motion as it is. I'd like to end as it is at this moment, and then we can revisit it if everybody's in agreement to do that, and see what we can come up with that is palatable to everybody. And as Michael said, maybe work on the language to see what we're trying to achieve, and then see what we can come up with that everybody can agree on.
Mr. Lyons, can you help me? Do I need to make a second motion? I understand Todd's motion and the direction he wants to go. Do we wait to vote on that motion and then I make a second motion, or do I make a motion at this time?
I think your motion would be a motion to amend it to work on it, amend his motion. So to do that, you're going to need a second to have that going. So if you make a motion to amend the motion that's before the board right now, and you get a second, and that motion to amend passes to essentially table this to rework it, then that's what happens. If it doesn't get a second, it doesn't get a second. So that's kind of the
Okay.
situation.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to amend your motion and try to accomplish exactly what I think what everyone's trying to accomplish here. My motion is that we would revisit this with our current board of trustees and look for language on conduct that we can all agree upon, and retool this current policy rather than simply scrap the whole thing.
All right, your motion has been made. Is there a second? I do not hear a second, so that motion is not passed. So I think we go back now to the original motion. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we go back to the original motion, and then we take a vote on that motion at this time.
The motion to amend fails for lack of a second. You're back to your original motion.
Thank you, sir. All right, the motion before us is to rescind the board member general conduct policy 2.01.10. All those voting aye, please say aye.
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 Aye. That would
Nay.
be those voting nay. The motion
Nay.
passes, is approved 3-1. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that the board initiate a general guideline for conduct policy and work with our current board on language that's suitable for all of us.
I don't know, Mark, are we needing to make a motion, or is that something we talk about and then see if we want to put it on as an agenda item?
I think where we are is a number of the trustees have expressed the willingness to revisit this issue and take a draft at it. So I think that's where we are. I don't think you need a motion. To the extent it might be something new, it hasn't been listed as an action item. So I think we go with the board's consensus that you want to make an effort at rewriting a standards policy or something along those lines.
All right, so we'll revisit it going forward then. All right. At this time, then, we're going to move on to the first reading action item of appointing a board liaison to the NIC Foundation Board. Normally, by tradition, the board chair goes ahead and does that, although there have been instances certainly where others than the board chair were the liaison. At this time, me not being the real wine and cheese sort of guy, although there are some people from the foundation that are new that I look forward to meeting and getting acquainted with, and several folks that I've known over the years, I'm of a mind that I'd like to pass the baton on that to the vice chair, Greg McKenzie. I think it'd be a tremendous experience for him and his wife, Jen, and it will help get him even more up to speed and knowledgeable of the relationship between the college and the foundation and his overall knowledge base of our operations and everything that's going on, and scholarships and fundraising and such. So I'm going to lead off by making a motion to nominate Vice Chair Greg McKenzie to appoint him as the board liaison to the NIC Foundation Board. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay. It's now open for discussion. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you for the consideration, and I would look forward to working with the foundation.
Greg, I'm quite confident that you'll do an amazing job. So, Michael, anything from you, sir? Are you good to go?
I do not. Great choice.
All right. At this time, then, I'd like to put it to a vote, please. All those voting in favor, please say aye.
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 I also vote aye. It passes unanimously, 4-0. Congratulations, Greg.
Thank you.
Now, in the course of conversation for scheduling, for coming up with the agenda for this meeting and scheduling the agenda, and in concert with the ICCC conference call that the president and I were on, we realized that there might be a possible conflict with our January board meeting date. We're set up for that Wednesday, and what we don't know yet, and Rick, please chime in if you have an update at this time. I know the legislature's been a little unclear whether it's in person or how exactly all this is going to go, but right now the 27th is the day that our president, along with the other presidents of the community colleges and such, are going to be down there briefing and working with Cfac, trying to convince them to support our budgets. So if Rick happens to be in Boise on the 27th, they would be hard pressed to be at our meeting on the 27th. So if I understand it right, and Rick again, or Shannon, correct me, I believe we're looking at changing that date from the 27th, that Wednesday, to Monday, the 25th of January. Is that correct?
That is correct. And might I add that 3 of the trustees did respond to my note about that date and their availability. So 3 were available. I haven't heard from 2 of the trustees.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the other trustees? I am available myself. I can make that date work. How about the other 3? Christy, how's that look for you?
I am available that day.
I'm available.
Greg, okay, thank you. Michael?
No problem. No conflict.
All right. Mark, can we just make that, or do I have to put that to a vote?
Well, if we're rescheduling it, normally we would make a motion to reschedule because we already passed the schedule earlier this year.
Correct. Okay.
The calendar. So
I make a motion that we reschedule our next meeting to the 25th. Oh, Laura Rumpler has a question.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Laura, what's your question?
I was hoping that someone might bring up the concern or the question of potential that the president may be traveling that Monday night to get down to Boise to do presentations on that Tuesday to both the House and Senate Education Committees, then rolling into Wednesday for Cfac. So I just wanted to make certain that that had already been considered and addressed. I apologize for the interruption.
Oh, no, that's an appropriate one. Rick, when we talked about that on the conference call, I wasn't seeing that as a conflict. Did I miss that? Because I didn't think they had the House and Education Committees even kind of rolled up yet for the timing. Did I miss that?
You did not. They haven't been scheduled yet. Usually they, in past years, they've followed Cfac. Cfac has usually been at the front end of our interactions with the legislature. It's all up in the air right now. We really don't know what's going to happen at this point. I'd be comfortable with going ahead and setting the meeting for Monday evening. If I'm able to, it just depends on the flight. I would attempt to take an earlier flight, and in this format, I could possibly do it from down there. The challenge for the other evening was that I'd likely be on an airplane returning back home. So I think we can work around that. And if I can't do it, Vice President Martin will likely be with me in Boise, and he has willingly stood in for me before in those germane hearings. So I would ask him to do so again.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we have a backup plan and a contingency plan. So when all heck breaks loose, we'll get the mission done. And you are correct. My recollection, and Christy could confirm this, seems to me we've done the Cfac, and then to your point, the House and Senate briefing have been after the fact. So that sounds right from when we've been down there. So I guess we'll wait and see. All right. Yes, Christy.
I would just also suggest that maybe we kind of determine what kind of business we even have for the January agenda. Because in the past we have, in light of not having a big agenda, skipped the board meeting and focused on Cfac.
Let me do this, if I may. Let us go ahead and make the motion, and hopefully second and pass it. And let's get the placeholder in there so we have the mechanism in place and the structure, and we can do everything we need to do and have it properly noticed, and just everything's in place. And then should we determine that we want to make that adjustment, we can maybe do that at a later date. But this way we can at least get the calendar slotted and kind of help people for planning and preparation. Because I'm not quite sure what we're looking at yet. Rick and I have talked a little bit about January, and I think we do have a few items on there. In fact, one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later, it's tab 7, is another thing that Rick and I had talked about, and something I'd asked Rick for was to kind of outline over the course of a calendar year the general topics that we kind of expect to see from month to month. We've had some consistency over the next years of, certain months are budget presentations, certain months maybe Beth Ann Fuller with different things for Head Start, both in the fall and in the spring. And so we're going to look at that, and you'll see some of the things, and so we've kind of slotted it by month to show us where we kind of start with a baseline of certain things that are the foundation, and then we add to that for the calendar for each month for the agenda. So I think I'd like to keep it in place at this time. We're quite a ways out, so we can always change our minds and reconsider depending on what comes up. What I would ask for, if people are comfortable with that plan, is that I could have a motion to reschedule the meeting from Wednesday, January 27th to Monday, January 25th.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Was that you, Greg?
Greg McKenzie.
Thank you. And Christy, thank you for the motion. All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. Not hearing any. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
I will vote aye also. Michael, did you vote?
I did. Aye.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if I heard you. All right, the motion carries and is passed 4-0. Shannon, if you would update the appropriate parts in the system to reflect that, I appreciate that.
I sure will.
Thank you very much. And if you'd send us the new notices and such things so we can get them in our calendars and all that, appreciate
Will
it.
do. Yep.
Thank you. All right. The next thing we're moving on to would be information items. It'd be tab 6, discussion on the aerospace program. Rick, do you want to kick that off?
Sure. Chair Banducci and trustees.
Thank you.
We were, I'm going to turn over to Chris Martin and Lita Burns here in just a second. This is just a follow up to the discussion we began at the board workshop. There was there's some information that was requested, and then also the proposal that I believe the board received prior to the meeting from Trustee McKenzie. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris. I think he's going to go first. And I did include some background information in the board packets. And there may be some questions about that. So I think I'll stop there and turn it over to Chris.
Chair Banducci, members of the board, as an information item, Dr. Burns and I are going to walk through a couple of slides just to talk through how we came through the considerations of suspending the aerospace program. And I wanted to encourage questions as we went along. So if it's all right with you, Chair Banducci, I would encourage interruptions and we can just address questions as they come up.
I think that's great, Chris. I appreciate your willingness to do that. So everybody, if you have a question, just speak on up.
So just to kind of get us started, I wanted to walk through just a little bit of the timeline that brought us to this decision and share some background information on how we got to the suspension. And honestly, almost since the grant that started the program, there have been ongoing discussions between instruction and finance doing regular reviews of the metrics and the finances of this program. That really came to a head last fiscal year. Last November, we met with then Chair Dunlap and had a discussion about the potential closing of aerospace as well as other programs and outreach centers. This was shared with the board at the workshop the following day. And we talked about that broadly, about the consideration for program and site closures. Also just wanted to share that right before the pandemic, Instruction had actually asked Pat O'Halloran, who is the chair for the aerospace program, for a memorandum of options on what options did exist for the aerospace program. And one of those options was the suspension of the program. And then there were some issues with a request to execute a lease option early. And so that also brought this forward early in the fiscal year. And then by August, the decision was made to send notice to suspend the program. And then in September, discussions began looking at how we could transition that to an apprenticeship model. So that's just briefly the timeline specifically that brought us to that decision last fiscal year.
I'm going to jump in here now. Oh, I'm sorry, were there questions? Okay, I'm going to jump in here now, Trustee Banducci, if that's okay, and pick up this.
You bet. I figured you two were going to tag team it so you'll know when each of you is on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Trustee Banducci, or Chair Banducci, excuse me. I need to correct my language.
No worries.
Yes, ma'am. I thought it would be helpful to just present our enrollment. And this, I need to specify that this is really programmatic enrollment. This is not course enrollment. So if you have had an opportunity to look at other numbers related to enrollment, I think it's really important to understand that this is enrollment for the program itself. And that's why you will see the numbers probably reflected as lower than maybe numbers that have been presented in other venues in the past. But looking at these numbers, you can see what our enrollment in, now we have two components of aerospace. We usually just refer to aerospace, but we certainly have two aspects of programming there. One really is related to the manufacturing side of aerospace, and the other one is related to the maintenance of the mechanic and well, we don't have power, but it would be power side in other programs. And that's the AERM. I do want to just point out with the asterisks some important detail to this particular chart. And that is under Aero in the 1920 academic year, some of those students are currently enrolled because it is a 2-year program. So we anticipate that some of those initial 12 students that enrolled actually will complete some credentials as well. And then the other asterisk really relates to the completion of the AERM program. Now through the that should be FAA, not FFA, so excuse me for the typo there. The FAA actually certifies our students, and it is that certification that allows them to become employed. So many students who go through the AERM program do not necessarily work towards an NIC credential. So that is probably the reason why we see lower credentials in the AERM program than we do in the Aero program. And indeed, 15 of the students for the 1920 year chose not to pursue a credential from NIC. The other thing I want to speak to in terms of credentials is we have multiple credentials in these programs. So for example, in the Aero program, a student can earn up to 7 different credentials because we have some basic technical certificates, we have intermediate technical certificates, advanced technical certificates, and the AAS. So it is possible for a single student to earn multiple credentials. And in fact, I would say, this is not, I did not calculate this number, but it's not uncommon for a student to earn 4 credentials in the Aero program. I did see at least one student who had earned all 7 of the credentials as they completed the Aero program. And so that's why the numbers might seem interesting or a little not as uniform as you would expect to see them in a presentation on enrollment and completion efforts. That's all I have to offer on this unless you have questions.
Are there any questions from the board? All right, Chris, do you have anything more to?
It's a hard
Greg, do you have
question.
a question?
You
Go
may
ahead.
not be able to answer this. It's a hard question. Employment for those who are seeking employment, generally, is it good, bad, poor afterwards?
I would respond, excuse me, Trustee McKenzie and Chair Banducci. How I would respond to that question is, it's not difficult to find employment, and our students who seek employment generally do find employment. It is not necessarily exactly related to the program that they graduated from. So because we have a lot of job outs, for example, many of our students will earn a credential, go to work, come back, earn another credential, continue to work and progress through that way. In the maintenance program, we have not seen all of our students actually get a job in that field, but they have become employed in a related field.
One more question.
Greg, do you have? Oh, is this Michael? Go ahead, buddy.
It's Greg. Follow-up question.
Oh, Greg, sorry. Go ahead.
Spokane CCS system, how many similar students do they output a year for like 19 to 20 or 18 to 19? Relatively, how big are we compared to them? You may not know it.
I don't, Trustee McKenzie, I do not know the exact numbers there. I certainly can pose that question to Pat and or Christy. They, I think, are very much more familiar with that program and the numbers that might exist there. So I can ask one of them to speak up.
Hi, yeah, Pat O'Halloran here. Thank you. Pardon my voice. SCC has been established a very long time. I believe, I'm going off the cuff, but I believe they're capped at, they're written toward 50 in a cohort, and they can manage perhaps another group off cycle of as many as 25. We are by design in that program to what we started, capped at 20. You could have 21st year, 22nd year at most in that program, the way we've written it.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. This is Todd. I have a question also, and I don't know if this is more for Lita or more for Pat. Talking about folks getting employment, maybe coming back and getting some additional credentialing. And I don't know if this is a part of Trustee McKenzie's question or not, but it occurs to me when we talk, he asked good job, bad job, this stuff. What sort of wage scale would we be talking? I mean, is this a livable wage? Is this a wage you can support a family on, that sort of thing? I mean, do we have kind of a range of what the expectation would be what these people can expect to earn? Or is that too broad to try to give an answer to?
I believe that Pat will be able to give you an answer to that question.
Certainly. I'll certainly attempt. Again, two different pathways and two different directions people are headed. And with the multiple credentials in the manufacturing I'll speak to, people would often leave sooner than 2 years, and depending on which skills they'd achieved and how far. But we were, well, as we've seen wages creep up around here, I'm speaking just pre-COVID, we were initially seeing students at $12 or so. We had $15 an hour is pretty normal out of the composites or even CNC mill operator sections of that program. I would say in the $12 to $15 an hour range was pretty normal across the span of advanced manufacturing. Mechanics were becoming in such short supply that our airframe only folks were likely, upon achieving their FAA success, likely to start around 20 an hour. An A&P mechanic would demand higher. And that's a more recent phenomenon, probably late 2019 kind of quote.
Pat, those folks in that 12 to 15 range, was there some upward mobility there, or was that fairly stagnant, or could those folks, advance from there, and that was more of an entry level with some possible
Those
growth?
are by design entry level employees. Their performance would certainly, and I will say in that arena, their success at the overall degree would set them up sooner for supervisory responsibility, et cetera. If they follow through with the math, English, et cetera, they're going to have that skill set sooner. So there is some upward mobility.
It's interesting you talk about that, because I remember when we first started working on the Parker Center and throughout all that, talking about some of those soft skills and how employers, have talked about wanting both sets of skills, both to be able to fix it and to be able to communicate and work with people. So appreciate you mentioning that, actually, because I know that's something that's been a focus. We've been trying to instill both sides of that with the folks that we're working with here at the college. So two skill sets that are both important for advancement. Are there any other questions?
I would like
sorry, go
to
ahead.
make one more comment about this slide and about enrollment. Please. I also want to offer that one of our basic technical certificates was designed that it could be completely online, and it has 4 courses, and so it can be done in a single semester and be completed completely online. We have seen some success in that, and it really was an effort to gain interest or garner interest across the state in our aerospace program. And this is a certificate that actually some dual credit students could earn this certificate. And we were finding that there were students who were interested in it, and we actually did get a couple of our dual credit students from various areas of the state to come and finish out our program here. So we were hopeful that that would be a student generator initiative, and to some degree it was really more I would say a course credit generator. So we found that many students were interested in these individual courses, and did take them. Community members also were interested in it. but it didn't often lead to enrollment in the program and to completion in either the Aero program or the AERN program.
You know, Lita, this is Todd. You've created a question here that I have. As you talk about the dual enrollment and some of that, it leads me to wonder, and there may not be an answer to this, I don't know if this is you or Pat or who, but I know there's also been some discussions as we start to think about that high school age group regarding Cfac and somehow trying to do some sort of cooperative effort with the folks out there with Kobe Mattia and that. And I know there have been some very preliminary, discussions and certainly some interest about what the possibilities are. And if you don't have an answer, that's okay. And we briefly touched on this at the workshop. Do we have any thoughts about that? Is that a way to try to reach to those at least juniors and seniors, even if they're not a dual enrolled, but maybe through Cfac?
Chair Banducci, if I could, may I ask you to, that was a wonderful segue to us to a later slide in the presentation. So if you could just hold on to that question, and we are going to talk a bit about that later in the presentation.
Certainly.
So we're getting to that. We're building to that. Thank you.
No, very good. Well, I'll be patient. Thank you. Continue when you're ready.
All right.
Just to add that one of the things that we were looking at when we talked about the periodic review of metrics is the instructor cost per credit that just looks at the direct cost of instruction per credit. And the aerospace programs, instructor cost per credit was over $600. And the average cost for all of the programs that we offered was $209 instructor cost per credit. And so that's another factor that went into this along with enrollment. And so I wanted just to share that's one of the metrics beyond enrollment that we regularly looked at. Just to kind of add to the story of what happened last year, many of the board members are very aware of this. Last year was a significantly hard year for us with holdbacks both on the general fund side and on the CTE side, and some base reductions. That was about $1.3 million in all that occurred last year. So this picture of all the things that happened last year between instructor cost per credit, enrollment, funding model, there was a lot of things that came together at one time. Just want to speak briefly. There was a question that was asked, did we seek other funding to support the aerospace program? And the short answer for that is yes, we did. And I want to give Pat O'Halloran the credit for this. He has been instrumental in working with partners across North Idaho. And one of those was with the Panhandle Area Economic Development Group to submit an EDA grant for North Idaho Aerospace Complex. The basis of that grant was $10 million for construction and then $1.5 million for equipment that would have brought in the power plant portion of this program. And that was a partnership with industry that started in 2018. Unfortunately, that grant did not succeed, and those partners have moved on using private funds, but there were efforts at play to work on that. And so that kind of adds to the facility timeline where we started working with PAC and the Panhandle Area Council to secure EDA funding. We were informed of the owner's intent to sell the facility, and you can see how that played out there with the request for an early option for us to execute the lease extension early on that. Just to speak to COVID-19 briefly, this was a secondary factor to the program, but obviously between the holdbacks and some of the issues that were prompted by COVID-19, it played into this decision as a secondary factor. Finally, the CFAC funds, just to speak briefly to this, we were asked, is there an opportunity to use CFAC funds for the aerospace program? We did receive CFAC funds in the initial round. We received almost $200,000 in CFAC funds. These are one-time funds. They required a direct connection or impact with COVID-19. And then we were required to submit all reimbursement requests by December the 11th for this funding. And so that was not an opportunity that we felt like we could use that for aerospace, but that's how the CFAC funds have fallen out to this point in time. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Burns for the discussion on pathways forward.
Lita, before you go, I'm sorry, I just want to just add one more bit of new information that I received today related to CFAC funds. It looks like with the passage of the stimulus funding that may be coming, today we learned that the CFA funds are completely off the table. So that I just want to make sure everybody has that information. Sorry, Lita.
Thank you, Dr. McLennan. So Trustee Banducci, excuse me, Chair Banducci.
Yes, ma'am.
We thought it was also really important to talk about the pathway forward for aerospace, because we, as a college, don't want to completely lose this opportunity, nor do we want to lose the opportunity to serve our industry partners with this program and this education. And so, as you know, that we have talked about moving towards an apprenticeship model. I'm going to ask Christy Doyle, Dean Christy Doyle, to speak to this. Intended to have Pat participate in this too, but we are going to limit taxing his throat at this time, since he's having challenges with just speaking at this particular time. But certainly he will be available for questions. But I will turn it over to Dean Christy Doyle at this time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So obviously NIC has been aware of the challenges faced by the Aerospace Center programs, and we have looked for opportunities to either sustain the current offerings, or where I get excited, kind of reimagine some of these programs based on industry need. And in the fall of 2019, we had an opportunity to partner with the State Board of Education and our sister institutions on the U.S. Department of Labor Closing the Skills Gap Apprenticeship Grant. The State Board of Ed subsequently was awarded the grant in early spring of 2020. The primary focus of the grant is to develop apprenticeship opportunities using a 4-credit model, which is very different for the United States. It's very well known in the UK, but very different for the United States. So we are focusing on a 4-credit model, and it includes the colleges as a sponsor to take on those administrative tasks off of the employers. Because when we were doing the grant, we heard that the employers really had a burden with these administrative tasks. So part of the grant is taking on that administrative task for the employers as well. The grant has 3 target industries: advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and IT/cybersecurity. At this point, we have not had to submit our final list of programs intended to pursue, although I will tell you we did have manufacturing on the original list in fall of 2019 based on what we already knew were some challenges. So we are in a really good space right now to move forward with both programs to some degree. I'll speak to advanced manufacturing first. So because the primary components of the Aerospace Advanced Manufacturing Program really are already housed at Parker, and through conversations held during other Manufacturing Advisory Committee meetings that I was able to attend from fall until this last spring, we actually found that all of our manufacturing programs would benefit from a market analysis. This analysis will include the Aerospace Advanced Manufacturing Suite of certificates and AAS degrees, as well as machining and CNC technology, industrial maintenance, millwright, and mechatronics, and the mechanical design engineering technology certificates and degrees. The outcome for this project will be a program-by-program overview, analysis, and evaluation, and will include program comparisons, recommended modifications, and best practices. This process is going to draw heavily upon industry research and input, and will guide us into which programs would benefit from being an apprenticeship opportunity. And we may end up having a program have a traditional pathway and an apprenticeship pathway. It will really be driven by what industry is sharing with us. And the analysis really is to bring employers into this conversation really early to help make those decisions. So I'm really excited about the advanced manufacturing opportunity that we have to really look at multiple programs in the advanced manufacturing area. Excuse me. For aviation maintenance, just to remind us all, and Patrick did talk about this previously, there are 2 ways by which individuals can attempt the FAA mechanic exam, and that is through an FAA approved maintenance technician program, which is what we have currently, or through gaining a minimum of 18 months of practical experience with either power plant or airframe, or 30 months of practical experience working in both of them at the same time. So again, because of all the challenges that we've discussed and possible solutions, the are also in tab 6, but also that we've talked about today, we did begin conversations with the advisory committee members and other industry partners this fall regarding the development of an aviation maintenance program. We would begin with our focus on the 18 months airframe experience, because that is what we are currently doing, would be the easiest lift, if you will, for us to take on. And that actually makes sense to the, in brief conversations that we've had so far with the employers, that would make the most sense to start with them as well. They do have a target audience kind of already for us, which is their current employees. As we looked long-term, we would have to develop kind of a long-term plan on how we look at additional pipeline development into that program. But students would spend less time at NIC, and we wouldn't be as bound to the FAA strict outdated script if we went this option. So we are kind of excited about that. The other piece I would share is that while we can't include this program in the Closing the Skills Gap grant, we can use everything that we are gleaning from this process for the 4-credit apprenticeship model to develop and deploy this apprenticeship program in aviation maintenance. Obviously, there are still unknowns, but we do truly believe this is a viable option if we start with the airframe first. And although it will not be without some challenges as any new program launching or relaunching like that has, but I do want to make note that, and I want to emphasize this, is that this is only an estimate, but Patrick has been looking, and it's about 5,000 square feet that we would need to offer a full A&P apprenticeship program, which is much less than what we've had or what we would need to do the traditional model. The last piece I just wanted to speak to briefly around the potential partnership with Ctech is that high school students who are 16 years and older may participate in any federally registered apprenticeship program, which that's the intent, is that these are going to be federally registered apprenticeship programs. So they're not limited in their participation due to age. So that would allow interested Ctech students to participate in any apprenticeship program that we are developing in this 4-credit model. And I believe Patrick mentioned that Ctech is interested in improving their advanced manufacturing skills, specifically in CNC mill and possibly potentially in composite, which would be new for them. So that's what I would share and would be open for questions.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Great information. I'm going to open it up, obviously, for questions, but one thing I'd like to request now, and maybe others might want also, but I'd like to have a copy of the presentation. I thought there was a lot of good information here, and I know we have some information in our board book, but a copy of those slides would be great too. If you wouldn't mind, maybe send a copy of those slides to everybody. I appreciate it. Are there any additional questions from anybody?
Yes, Todd, I have a question.
Yes. Oh, please go ahead.
I probably for Rick or Chris, if we move forward with the apprenticeship model at some point in time, well, first of all, have you looked a year or two out of when you think we could do this? And then what's the initial cost on the apprenticeship?
Chair Banducci, Trustee Wood, I'm going to tag back in our friends from Instruction to talk about the potential cost models. Lita or Christy, do you have any detail on that?
Do you want me to take that, Lita?
Please.
Sure. So the cost model for the aviation maintenance specifically, we don't really have the details on what that will look like, Trustee Wood. Most of that is built around that training happening at the employer site. And then obviously you have fees and such that are associated with an apprenticeship program. So we don't really have a true cost of what that would be at this point in time. These are all still in development. And again, we are looking at a 4-credit model, which is very different than what we traditionally have been doing. And we're following the Harper College. And so we're still kind of learning and gleaning. The grant was supposed to launch in spring of 2020. And because of COVID, we are just now kind of delving into this.
This is Todd. Well, from my perspective, I'm excited to hear that we're looking at so many different things. It's tremendous to hear that we have so many things to explore and to potentially to utilize. It was a moment there in time where we were faced with maybe just shutting the program down and having a garage sale and trying to figure out a place to get a storage unit to put everything excess in. And so we're a far cry from that eventuality at the moment, it sounds like. So I think that's great progress, and I appreciate the effort and the work that's being done to explore these opportunities. So thank you very much for bringing us the information tonight.
I have a topic question.
You have a question? Yeah. Greg? Go ahead, please.
So it seemed like there's a business market plan to see if what programs are currently being offered in the topic of advanced manufacturing. Does that mean that if we were to move to an apprentice model, just for argument's sake, at the Parker Center, that a new building would not be required because maybe merge it with existing programs?
Do you want me to take that, Lita? Okay, sorry. Trustee McKenzie, yes, that is correct. Everything for advanced manufacturing is already housed at Parker, and so there is no cost for a building to do anything with advanced manufacturing. And the intent, honestly, is, again, we have heard multiple suggestions from all of our industry partners across all the manufacturing programs. So we really want to get their involvement and determine what we need to do, what competencies we need, what skills we need, how long the programs need to be, and that type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. One follow-up. Could you just discuss, I'm kind of under the impression that the college, the NIC kind of synced up our A part of the Aero program so the students could finish the P part with Spokane. Could you describe the impact that COVID had with that, since I think we shut down for 2 months?
I can go into that if you like.
Go ahead, Pat.
This is Pat O'Halloran. We did, in our adaptations, knowing, the marketability has been discussed of being airframe and not power plant. So we had recently restacked the curriculum to offer the 45 credits that got them FAA respect, if you will, in a 12 calendar month sequence. So that was fall of 19 and lo and behold into 2020. So yes, we had some delay. The idea would be they finish then in August to August, essentially, and upon completion with us, they could continue on into general eds and complete the degree with us. They could transfer, they'd be on time and in sync to transfer to Spokane Community College to segue into power plant if that was their wish, or simply go right to work, or some blend of this. And it seemed to, our draw and the wages increasing, I'm sure, seemed to go up. We've had a pretty good history of and a good collaboration with Spokane. They always have attrition by that point in their program, and we know the folks, and it's a good relationship. And so that those options were in line. So that was the plan. The disruption of COVID, we were able to still adapt the fall group to be out of here in early October, which was in time within just a week or two for them to get to power plant classes. A couple had the intention. One that I know of is persisting right now.
Greg, anything else, or did that answer your question?
No, I just was reading through the facilities master plan, and it's even back in 2018 when the lease was being negotiated shorter, that the Aero building was not included into the college's was it 5-year plan? I don't know. They list the top 5 buildings. They wanted the capital investment fund to go towards it, and it was not included. So I don't know. I just thought that to be odd timing.
Okay. No, that's a good observation. It does beg another question, though, as I'm thinking through it. I'm not sure who's appropriate to answer this. I have not been out to the Parker Technical Center in a while. Life and circumstances and pandemic and everything else. how much space is not being utilized? Maybe that's not the right way to ask it. Or how much of our space is being utilized, or how much of our capacity is being used at the Parker Technical Center? In other words, how much room would we have additionally to accommodate anything for aerospace or whatever? And I know that building's also designed that we can always add on to it, but where are we at right now as far as utilization of that facility? Anybody have an idea on that?
Chair Banducci, I'd like to respond to that. Currently,
Please, thank you.
yeah, currently all the classrooms and labs are designated and are being utilized by our current programs. Now, I think there's a different discussion related to the utilization and how they're utilized and capacity. Because of the downturn in enrollment, those labs are not filled to the capacity that they are capable of being filled to. But certainly in terms of offering all the programs, with the programs that we are offering, we are utilizing all the lab space that was designed for the Parker Technical Education Center. So
Okay.
it would be squishing people out or squishing people together to try to free up some sort of an extra lab, and particularly a lab the size that we would need for power to be able to put it at the Parker Center. It just really is not feasible from my perspective. I certainly will defer to Chris to add comment to that.
All right, well, that did answer my question, though, Lita. That was the question I was driving to. And I understand maybe we're not at full occupancy in the classrooms or the labs that are being used, but to your point, it sounds like every lab or classroom is being used at some level, and so there aren't any just vacant or extra labs or classrooms or anything like that would be available to absorb something. So. Chris, did you have any other comment on that by chance?
No, sir. I know that that Dean Doyle and her group have already started talking about space and how we could accommodate change. And so that's something that their group has started talking about. That's the only thing I would add to that. I would just share back to Trustee McKenzie's point in the development of the master plan. I think that speaks to our uncertainty in the future of this program, even at that point, that we did not go ahead and dedicate a plan for capital funds for this program. Even then, we were watching it, knowing that it was not maybe as sustainable as we had planned on it being when the grant was developed.
You know, Chris, it's probably not something you have off the top of your head, but again, as we designed that Parker Technical Center, it was designed to be expanded. And I'm not sure I understand what that looks like. In other words, what chunks can be added or not, or how much has to be done at one time if you try to expand, or what an expansion even looks like. Do we have any metrics on that at all about if we expand, it's got to be uniformly this way? It's, you know, on this end, it's going to be, you know, it's got to at least be minimum this much or this much, or, you know, do we have any idea on anything like that, or is it kind of the Wild West right now still on that, whatever we want to propose? I'm not quite sure how that was planned out.
Chair Banducci, trustees, that building, you're absolutely correct, was designed to be really, really flexible. And so looking at the needs that aerospace might have at the Parker Center, I would just remind us that we have 40 acres and we've got pre-planned spaces that can be developed outside of the actual building. But the end wings of that building were designed to pop off and extend the hallways on down behind the building. And so that is absolutely by design. And the design was done in such a way that it doesn't have to be a certain amount of space. There's not a preset design there. We can just add on as would be needed.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I didn't know if it was in a concept of kind of a modular concept, or if we expand, it's kind of by these increments or not. So it sounds like we have that flexibility to scale it as we feel we need.
That is correct. The only caveat I would add to that is because of the length of those hallways, there will be need for additional restroom facilities as we add on, just because the way the building was designed, we're at the next phase where we need to add restrooms. That's the only wrinkle to this conversation I would add.
All right. Thank you for that information, Chris. Appreciate it.
If I may say something?
Certainly.
I just wanted to express appreciation to NIC, to all of you for, thank you for, I feel like this presentation addressed the genuine concern that I experienced with constituents on the campaign trail. And just your presentation was great, and I can easily forward them to this to answer their questions. And I appreciate the time in the midst of a pandemic and lots of other things going on at the college. So thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board, or are there any additional comments or input from the presenters? Obviously to include you two, Rick. Anybody like to add anything, or we'll move on to the next tab? I want to give this last opportunity. All right, not hearing anything. Again, appreciate the presentation and the good information. And again, if we could get a copy of those slides, that would be great. I appreciate the team effort from everybody involved on this one. We're going to move on under information items to tab number 7. This is the board meeting planner for January through December 2021. Rick, if you would speak to that, please.
Yes. So actually, Todd, you actually had this idea, and I thought it was a good one. We have a number of items that come up on a regular cyclical basis on our board agendas. And so Todd thought it would be useful, especially for the new trustees, to see what's out in front of us. So when does tenure approval happen? What does our budget cycle approval, time frame look like? So basically, it's just what I asked Shannon to do, and what she's pulled together for you are those standing, regularly appearing board items on an annual basis that show up in their respective meetings during the month, and really that's it. So thought that might help you have a little bit of a broad roadmap going forward to see how things move through the year.
They'd be appreciated. Todd, are you there?
Yeah, one of the things that, sorry, mute button. I think this is a nice foundation from which we can build agendas, and as Dr. McLennan and I were talking, so this gives us a start for each of these months and get a little bit of what to anticipate and a look forward. So hopefully that is a helpful tool to everybody as they look to what to anticipate. Does anybody have any comments or questions or observations about that, or anything that we are missing or should add that jumps out at them?
Is there a single place to obtain all the prior board books on the website?
Shannon, do you, Rick, somebody have an answer for that one? I'm not aware of to get the videos are out there. Are the books still there?
The books are out there. We have all of our board books, which include the minutes and all of the information from all the board meetings back at least more than a decade. So they're stored on the trustees webpage. About the middle of the page, if you just surf down the middle of the page, you'll see the archive links for all of those.
You're right, and there it is. It starts out with 2020, but you can go below that, and to Shannon's point, there's a spot there where it says books archive, then it's agendas archive, and then minutes archive, it looks like. So it looks like there's quite a bit of information that's out there that can be retrieved.
And I will add, at some point in the last 10 years, I believe, there was a time when the minutes were archived separately. And at some point we began, I think it was before I got here, we just began including the entire board book, which included the minutes.
All right. And for all those on the call, that location of those is nic.edu nic.edu/board/. So just nic.edu/board. That'll take you to the Board of Trustees page on the NIC website. And that's where you can see the information for the next meeting, the current board book. You've got the videos of all the previous board meetings. Shows the trustee zones. Gives our meeting schedule going forward through June at this time, June of 2021. And as we just discussed, you can get information from the prior meetings. And if you're really motivated, you can see pictures of all the trustees and a little short bio on them. All right. Thank you, Shannon. I think that we can move on to the next agenda item. We have it listed as student participation and athletic activities. And Graydon, if you're prepared, I'll let you lead off with that.
You bet. I'll be glad to. Chair Banducci, trustees, colleagues and friends, thank you for the opportunity to give you an update on our athletic program. I appreciate that the comments earlier tonight with some of our guests who came in and talked about the value of athletics. I think we all probably know, and I know Todd, you participated and others have as well, about the value that athletics plays in providing an opportunity for young people to come to college, participate and go on. So I appreciate those. Know that we share a sentiment too about hoping badly that our athletes have a chance to participate this year, playing this season, but certainly our priority in all of that has been safety, as I know you all share that. I want to start by offering my thanks to our athletic department, because in this environment, much like instructors in the classroom or some of our workers and you can imagine in the residence hall or student services employees, it's been a challenging year in higher education and of course across all of America. But in the athletic department, our coaches for the exceptional job that they've done, our athletic director, Bobby Lee, our trainers certainly have been challenged to operate in this environment. And more than anything else, our student athletes, none of us ever imagined, they certainly didn't, coming to college and not being able to play in competitive games during the fall semester or navigate an environment like they have. So I'm so grateful for the work that they've done and how they've persisted through this semester. Really proud of that. I want to share with you, as we came into the semester knowing what we faced, we had some principles that Bobby and I and the coaches talked about, and that began with emphasizing student athlete safety. That would always be the case. That's primary for all of us. So we talked about that. We also talked about, and I listened to Bobby talk about this at staff meetings all the time, about academic success. Athletics is often that opportunity to get a young man or young woman into college and be able to complete a degree that they may not have otherwise had the opportunity for. So our second area of emphasis was academic success, and certainly important is their student athlete experience. It's from being a teammate to practices to individual skill development to winning as a team. So all those things are combined, but really in that order, that drives some of the work that we do. So as we faced this environment and had to decide what that looked like, and most of you are familiar as you've watched other programs from professional to college to high school navigate these circumstances. We had decisions to make. Many of those, of course, are drawn from our own protocol on our campus. I think you're familiar with that right away. We talked about the safety protocol as recommended by Panhandle and CDC and others about a mask mandate and sanitation and physical distancing. So that drove a lot of the work that we were doing for all of our programs, from clubs and organizations to classrooms to athletics. The NWAC that most of you know that we participate in as a conference did some incredible work. I would encourage you, if you haven't, to go out to their website and read through what they did. They gathered truly experts, doctors, trainers, coaches, all kinds of folks have drawn from NCAA, from every conference to develop a set of guidelines, rules, protocol to govern what they do. And so please do, if you get a chance, go out and take a look at that if you have an interest, because they did some exceptional work looking at everything certainly big umbrella about student athlete safety and coaches safety and fan safety, but drilled all the way down to the most minute details, from practice to training, to travel, to game management, to cleaning protocols. They really covered all of those different areas, and we were so pleased by the guidance that they've provided to us and across all the teams in Oregon, Washington, Canada, and our team in Idaho. So that's what we've been following. Briefly, I can tell you they set up a phased re-entry to play, and that's what was guiding our action this fall. So when we came back to campus, and this is not unlike other conferences or other levels of higher education athletics. When they came back to campus to start the school year, there was a quarantine period, a phase. And these phases, by the way, are typically 14 days long, 2 weeks. So when they came to campus initially, there was a call for our athletes to be quarantined, meaning, you know, coming from different areas, different cities, different locations. Let's get them here and make sure that that they're safe to begin with. So they came in and focused on classes, focused on school, and didn't worry about the athletic competition for the first couple of weeks. Then we went into that was the gray phase, and they just did individualized training. We went into and this was happening over the course of the fall. We went into a red phase that was small groups. You've heard about pods or small groups that could work together. Often with our athletes, they may have been in a situation where they were sharing an apartment or sharing a residence hall room, and those were pods that kind of stuck together. So that's a good plan for keeping each other safe. Or you can isolate, if there is a sickness, you can isolate it to that pod and not the rest of the team. So that next phase was those small groups, the red one. Then there's a yellow one that was a modified partial team. So it's increasing the size of those groups again. So as we've gotten more confidence, as we know we're following protocol, keeping people safe, then we expand that. Finally, you can get to the green phase. The green phase is full team, bringing everybody together, being able to compete. This fall, all the programs were suspended across the board. None of them had games that they could compete in. So that wasn't an issue. We went to the modified partial team and had great success. For the most part, our coaches, our players, our trainers did a really nice job. Bobby, as the administrator, did a really nice job managing that. Included a couple other protocols in there was meeting some health conditions so that we could identify any student athletes who were at risk when they came to campus through their physicals. We had to have that information. Was really pleased that we were able to participate in what's called healthy roster. That is where there's every day, and it's done through their phones, which, as you would know, most of them have, a checklist. And this happens with NJCAA, NCAA, and most other programs, a checklist of questions that they ask themselves. Am I feeling this? Am I feeling this? It's an inventory. And so they would go through that, and they had to. And then those reports all went to the athletic trainer every day. If there were some answers that they gave to questions that formed an alert, then the athletic trainer would be back in touch with the student athlete and talk about that, and talk about whether they were eligible to practice that day, whether they should be referred for additional health care, or referred into our student health team on campus as well. So that was taking place every day for all of our teams. And then there are temperature checks. So we had purchased the temperature guns so that as athletes came in to practice or to work out, as we got into further phases, then they had to have that temperature check done as well. So there were a lot of nice protocol that was in place, that was developed by INWAC, that we followed, that I think enabled us to have the success working through these phases during the course of the fall. For an athlete to be able to participate, they had to have the green light relative to the healthy roster and meet the temperature check. We certainly had some cases among our athletic teams. Not a surprise. That's a group that is together more often than other groups. You know how they team up or cohort up. So we had some, but we managed those as well as we could, utilizing the protocol from the college and from the NWAC. I know there's some concern or question about the wrestling team doesn't belong to NWAC, they belong to NJCAA. And if you compare the protocol, primarily as I looked at it, the difference was not that the NJCAA recommended many of the same things, from mask wearing to physical distancing. They postponed their season into this spring semester as well, much like NWAC did. They just don't mandate it. The NWAC was mandating these protocols and these phases, and the NJCAA recommended it, but didn't mandate it. So we followed that protocol across all of our programs. As we come back, and the executive board of the NWAC just met this last week and updated their return to play for this spring semester. And so what that looks like is teams are able to come back for spring semester. For us, that the semester starts January 11th. We're back on January 4th. So the teams can come back and they work through the phases again. Again, having been home and off campus, what they would do is they would have those first couple of weeks of individual training and quarantining. If things go well there and there's not an outbreak of cases, they move to that red phase of small group. If things go well there, they move into the modified team, again, following the healthy roster and the temperature checks. And then they could move into green, essentially 6 weeks into the semester, those 3 14-week intervals that I talked about that allow them to get the team competition, starting individual, small pods, larger groups, finally team groups. They could move into that 6 weeks into the semester where they could compete if all goes well. But that's the point, trying to make sure that we don't have an outbreak. You've seen from college teams to pro teams of games getting canceled, changed, delayed, postponed, because there are outbreaks. There are things that happen. So this is a phased approach to get us there. And anywhere along the way, if there's an issue, we can jump back and then move back again. NWAC set at their executive board meeting this last week, set the return to competition to March 1st. And so all of those sports, that would be for us with the sports that we carry, that would be men's and women's basketball and volleyball. And then we have softball, and we have all the others that they can start participating March 1st. NJCAA on wrestling said that they could return to competition toward the, I think it's toward the end of January. We've chosen to manage this because it's been such, I think it was so well researched, so well applied, and it was successful for us in the fall. We've chosen to follow that same protocol with all of our programs. So wrestlers would come back along with basketball players, along with other sports programs, work through that phasing period. The one variation potentially for wrestling might be that if you wait till March 1st, they've missed some of their season. So there may be, if you follow 6 weeks from essentially January 4th, there's the potential that if they move through it successfully, you could be middle to end of February, and that puts us in a time frame that works for wrestling and their season. But all of this, we say every day. Bobby Lee, who's on the call tonight, always says, as of today, as of this day, this is where we're at. As of today, this is our protocol. We're again pleased and proud of our coaches, our student athletes, our trainers, our administration for following this and make it work for us successfully this fall. Our plan is to come back in January, March, do that again. Hope everybody's taking good care of themselves, follow our protocol, have an opportunity is what we want for all of these young men and young women, have an opportunity for them to following our guidelines, be safe, have success in the classroom, be able to participate as a team, be able to compete against other teams, being able to, we all want a championship. There's not an NWAC championship this year. We're just playing in our regions. You know, we all want to win games and all of that, but that's secondary to keeping our athletes healthy, to have them successful in the class. And we hope we can do all the above. So that's the plan. And I hope that gives you an idea about how we're moving forward. I'd be really glad to answer any questions for you. Thank you.
All right, this is Todd. I have a couple questions and a couple comments, but I want to open it up to the other board members first in case anybody else wants to jump in.
I have some educational questions.
Sure.
So the athletic pods that you're referencing when they're stuck together, were they allowed to train like on mats or meet in fields and practice their sports, or like they would get together, they were allowed to practice then? I missed that.
Certainly, that did occur. If you were around, if you've driven through campus, a real visible example was soccer teams. I know we talked about, we could look out the window and you could see small groups of soccer players practicing as we progress forward. Basketball team, I'm not sure about volleyball. Bobby can enlighten us on some of those as well. But certainly as they moved through those, they were able to practice. We stayed away from this fall from real close contact and followed our protocol. That way we didn't compete against other teams, but they were able to practice in those pods and modified team where it moved into bigger groups. We didn't scrimmage. We didn't bring in other teams this fall at all.
So that's soccer. Basketball was in the gym then?
And I'm looking at Bobby. Basketball did some of the practice in the gym. Volleyball, Bobby, as well. You're muted, Bobby. Bobby, you're muted.
Forgive me, I should know this, but Bobby is...
Oh, I'm sorry. Bobby Lee is our athletic director. Trustee McKenzie, and we're trying to get him on there, but I'm not sure. Bobby, try it one more time. No, not a microphone on that. The primary objectives this fall was individualized training and small group training. So everybody was working out in one fashion or another. It started out individual, moved to small group, got the modified team. I can't tell you program by program, Trustee McKenzie, exactly what it looked like for everybody involved.
Basketball did work out, yes.
Thank
All
you.
teams worked out. Bobby, I'm speaking for you.
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
There it is. We hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. Thank you. I'm Bobby. I'm the athletic director at North Idaho College. Thankful to be here. Our teams worked throughout the fall to get through the systems and the phases progressively all the way through. They did a really good job of following college mandates as well as conference mandates, but all of our teams had the opportunity to work out throughout the fall up until November 20th. And then kind of that last push academically put us in that position. So yeah, we're looking forward to coming back in January, but yes, everybody got a great opportunity throughout the fall.
I have a comment, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Christy.
Well, Graydon, I really appreciate that presentation. Really what you did was really focus on not only you, but all of the professionals that you spoke of, focused on student safety, athletic safety. And I think we need to be very grateful for that. I agree with what you'd said, that their health and safety comes first. Everything else is secondary. As much as we want them out there and succeeding and having this be a normal year, we know it's not. And so I think what our coaches and certainly our athletic director and you, Graydon, have done is make it the best experience possible while dealing with a pandemic. And I just so appreciate your efforts and all of the professional guidance that you sought out. And it's really sad for the athletes that it's not the year we want it to be, but you've kept them safe and you've kept the campus safe. So I appreciate all those efforts.
I have one more question.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sounded like the 6-week was up, at least adjacent to some upcoming wrestling matches. Will they be missing wrestling matches if all goes well?
Trustee McKenzie, I think they had early on scheduled, may have even been late January, that was a inter-squad scrimmage. There was also one out-of-state travel trip that I think falls within that time frame. But the majority of the most important matches for them to qualify to do what they need to do, they could hit within that window if they go through those 6 weeks and they're successful. I want to note it's. I think you heard it's not an automatic 6 weeks. It's if we progress, each step is built upon the other. So if that goes well, you think about where that moves forward from January 4th, we could be mid-February, and that leaves us plenty of time to compete in the matches that we need to.
Greg, do you have anything else?
Nothing, not right now.
All right, if nobody else has any questions or comments.
One more question. Is there
Okay.
a athlete advocate that can get anonymous feedback from the athletes and or you know, it even comes to mind with students too, but
There is, Trustee McKenzie. I'm pleased to tell you that a year ago we developed when I started having responsibility for the athletic department, and Bobby Lee's been a part of this. We developed we call it SALC, Student Athlete Leadership Council, that teams have nominees that participate within a council or an organization that represents them as constituents of an athletic program. I'm not a supervisor to it, neither is Bobby. Those are representatives from each of the program that carry forward concerns, questions, desires, interests of student athletes, and there's representation. I'm hoping from all the teams, but certainly a majority of the teams. It's advertised among the coaches. They know they seek out student athletes to serve in that capacity to represent their programs collectively.
would it, I'm not saying that it would change any policy, but would it be appropriate to request they provide the trustees and the president an opinion email? Or I don't want to put, I'm interested in hearing their perspective on it. I want them to be safe, naturally.
Sure. Certainly, Trustee McKenzie. We can go back and take a look at minutes and information. I'm super proud of the group, that it was organized, that it was formed, and that's been an active organization, not unlike other clubs and organizations. They represent that student interest. So I'm sure that they're willing to express their feelings about their experience.
Do we, as in you're saying we will be provided their feedback?
You know, Trustee McKenzie, if that's a request that the board wanted to make, to either have athletes or a representative group of athletes, SALT makes the best sense. That's certainly a request we can pass along to them and see if that's something that is of interest of them, if that's a request of the board.
Well, I don't know if we have to vote on it or not, but yeah, I'd like to know what the feedback is. These guys are adults. And so I'd like to know if the athletes want to participate or not. This is Todd. Greg, do you have anything else?
Nope. It's been long enough.
Okay. Well, I have some very specific questions. And first off, I'd like to know, have the wrestlers actually been in their wrestling room and worked out in their wrestling room as yet this year?
And I'm gonna, Bobby Lee, I'm gonna ask you to respond to that one, would you please?
Actually, throughout the fall, our wrestlers did not wrestle in the wrestling room this fall. We followed protocols connected to the institution and had discussions with Coach Sabali and the progression and performance stuff we made from a conditioning standpoint, from a strength and conditioning standpoint. We put our intentions there throughout the fall. Our intention is when we come back in January to progress through the process and have an opportunity to get back in the wrestling room.
All right. I'm going to make a sidebar for just a second. It's an observation. As a former wrestling coach and having a son that was a wrestler all the way through college and being certified bronze with USA Wrestling and in all three disciplines, I kind of know wrestling a little bit, been here, done that. you realize that wrestling's a little different sport. It's not like basketball. You just jump in the gym and you go at it, or you jump on the diamond and you play softball or baseball, or you hit the soccer. It's very different. You have to have specific training partners by weight. You also have the weight management aspect. So wrestling's more of a longer glide path and a slope. So you got to have time on the mat. So either they've got to be in our room, or they've got to be dished out to the local high schools or something. You can't just jump on the mat. It's a much longer time process for wrestling. And so we got to treat it differently than other sports, is how you start and stop and how you restart. So I'm just going to say that from experience, because it's the truth. You know, it's about a 4-month process. We start working the protocols and weight and how you can move weight classes and what you can do. And it's not something you just turn off or on like a switch. Basketball guys get on and off the court, nobody cares. You know, soccer can do the same. You know, no other sport is unique like that, like wrestling. It's particularly because of the weight management. Okay, here's another thing. Graydon, you made the distinction of the NJCAA versus the NWAC. Now, the NWAC is a self-contained conference other than us, Oregon and Washington. So they have the protocols and they do what they want. And they can schedule their season. At the end of the season, maybe there's a postseason, maybe they're not. Maybe there's a championship, maybe it's by region. But they can control that all within their own. A sport that's NJCAA, and similar to like when we were in the SWAC, now it's just the wrestling at that level. But the point is that conference schedule, all their stuff is driven by the national body, and they can't function in their own little conference like the NWAC. So Coach Sabali and those guys are at the mercy of what's being set by the NJCAA for competition. And there's a couple caveats to that. You've got divisions 1, 2, and 3 that are participating along with NAIA. My son's alma mater has had duels. They've hosted a tournament. I mean, they're going at it. So NJCAA said, okay, we're not going to wrestle until right after the first year. But here's the problem now. You may be able to get some NJCAA schools to wrestle you at some point. Maybe you get a season. But if you don't get to the NAIA schools by the middle of February, you won't get them on your schedule, because they're going to step back before they've got to go to nationals and districts, because there's the protocol there. So the Montana schools are off the schedule. Any of the NAIA schools that we would try to schedule, because we do have travel limitations, and it's a ways to get down to Oregon and other places to find schools to wrestle. So there's a little more nuance to how they schedule, because of the way the offset's gone with the divisions 1, 2, and 3, and the NAIA have an offset schedule to the NJCAA. So we've limited Coach Sabali significantly on who, at least in the Western U.S., or the Northwestern U.S., of who's available for him to even schedule, because by the time we get up, some of the schools will not wrestle us because they have to stay in their little bubble so that they can go to the national tournament. And so there's other protocols there. So I'm concerned we have nobody on, they're not on the mat. We're going to have real significant scheduling issues. And then, to be honest, you put it to these coaches, and that's the basketball too. If you have kids with desires to go to 4-year institution at whatever level, do they stay and come back to this school? Do they move on now and go to a different place after the first year, or do they jump to the next level? Well, kids can't stay on hold in their lives, and although they're giving people an extra year of eligibility, sometimes somebody can't stay at the junior college for 3 or 4 years. So I think there's a concern there as to what are our coaches supposed to say to their athletes, and what they're going to tell them is like, yeah, come back and pay money and come to school here, but we don't know. And the other point, and this is directed back at you, Graydon, if I have a student that's in the NJCAA, excuse me, and I have a student athlete in the NWAC, they have different governing bodies. They have different rules. They have different schedules. They have different recruiting rules. They have different scholarship rules. I would even bet you that inside our own institution, they probably have different tuition costs. I bet it makes a difference if they're a walk-on, if they're treated as in or out of district. I'll bet you there's a difference on how many credits are required to stay eligible. Is that true? I mean, am I touching on things that are true, that there's these distinctions between being NJCAA and being NWAC? But yet we're going to lump the NJCAA guys along with the NWAC for the protocols and the ability to compete, even though we have them under different rules and different jurisdiction and a different governing body.
Chair Banducci, to the question as I understood it, I'm focusing on tuition and fees primarily. There are differences because of the rules are different that way. The rules are different for how much you can award. We can't do room and board for NWAC. We can do room and board expense in NJCAA. We can't do full scholarship in NWAC. We can do full scholarship in NJCAA, not in NWAC. And so there are some differences that way, certainly. The differences, like there are differences in between conferences. NCAA level has differences between their conferences and their different levels of play too.
I understand that as a former Division I athlete. But I would suggest too, the NCAA probably has higher academic standards and more credits that are required for eligibility. Is that correct?
That the NJCAA does?
Yes.
No, I don't believe that's true. That's certainly something I can research, but I don't believe that's true.
My concern is that they are different, and they're treated differently because they need to be treated differently. But yet, as far as the ability to participate and to have a season, they're being lumped together. And I wrote something, and I'm going to read it because I do better if I read it. And here's what I say. I say governance in higher education requires transparency. Transparency that encourages strength and development in this institution. The role of the board is to ensure that interests of all stakeholders, including those in the minority, are protected. By withholding athletics when it is occurring in all other parts of our community and state, and wrestling is a perfect example, our high schoolers are wrestling, and they've been wrestling all over, and there's wrestling everywhere. We're failing to meet the diverse needs of our students and engage the community. And we're also hurting the local wrestling community at the high schools, as evidenced by the head coaches and the people that are coming forward to us. And I thought it was interesting, you went through all the protocols when Coach Moffitt even sent us his sheet, same thing, almost exactly the same stuff on that sheet. In the NIC vision statement, we strive to provide accessibility, to be innovative, and to be a center for the community. And nowhere in there is there a clause that drops us of that responsibility because of the pandemic. And I think that by refusing to provide these athletic opportunities, we're hindering the student success, our potential for community engagement, and I think our stewardship here in the North Idaho community. So I think we're being short-sighted here, and I think we're hurting our student athletes. And I think we're wrong to be lumping the wrestling program under the same umbrella as the NWAC programs. And it almost just makes us want to reach back out, I think, to the boosters and the people out there and go, are we in the right place to be in the NWAC? Do we have people out there that would be willing to come forward through our booster club and say, you know what, I'd be happy to support or donate over the next 5 years or whatever? Because, yeah, there are academic considerations because of travel and some other things. But the primary reason that we moved really from the SWAC, and I was on the board and I voted against it, was financial. And we were supposed to realize a pretty substantial savings. Well, I'll suggest to you, if we look at the numbers hard and look at the budgets for some of these programs, we have not realized the types of savings that were being touted at that time. And so, I question this, and I got to tell you, as a trustee, as an athlete, as a booster, as a fan, I think we're wrong about this, and I think there's another potential for a real PR disaster. The wrestling community is quite the tribe, and they really hang together. They're a clan. They're a whatever you want to call them. They're a group. They're a family. Very tight. Kind of I think how soccer kind of does their thing too. But so this is not good. We're not interacting. We're not engaged. I mean, we cancel our tournament, and Kellogg hosts a tournament instead in the same weekend. High schools are having tournaments. The North Idaho Rumble's going. We've got kids go down to Bucks Bags Duels. Post Falls was down there in Nampa. So we got high school kids going all over. I can't believe that the high schools are that much better than us at managing this and keeping their athletes healthy and safe. And to that, there's tons of empirical data where the wrestlers aren't getting sick. Wrestling's been one of the best sports at managing this. And so ironically, some of the high profile basketball has gotten some press for not doing it so well. A couple football teams in the professional ranks, guys that snuck out of their bubble or whatever. I really think we need to think long and hard about this. And I think it's a real negative for us to treat wrestling different. I mean, basketball can still have their season. They'll get their 20 games or whatever and can do whatever regionally. But this is kind of death row for the wrestling program, I think.
Mr. Chair,
So, yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Christy.
well, you've said a lot. And
I did.
I guess this was put on the agenda for an information item, and you have the ability to do that as chair. And I thought it was really good information. I was actually happy to listen to it. Mostly really pleased with all the efforts by all the coaches and by Graydon and by our athletic director. I think that we all can have our opinions, but we have to be really careful as trustees not to, I mean, none of us are athletic directors, and we have to be really careful in how we approach things. And so I think it's fine to have these conversations, Todd, but I guess I feel you inching toward trying to wrest control away from the vice president, the athletic director, the president of the institution. And I don't think that's what we want to do as board members. I think we want to support all these professionals in any way we can. And so we had a really good explanation from Graydon about where we're at and how hopefully, if all goes well, our students are back practicing and competing in February. And so I really think that for the board, we need to step back and let them do their job. And I guess I'm really concerned about the direction you're maybe trying to go with this when it's not really the purview of the board.
I have something I'd like to say.
Go ahead, Greg.
The only feedback I have to you, Todd, is you maybe break it up more into 2 minutes and allow more people to address the numerous topics you addressed. But with regards to taking away from control, I just want to, this is a new board, and this board does ask questions that I feel like prior boards have not been asking. And so the fact that Todd is proposing these questions, wow, Christy, I think having voted for masks on the city council and having a different view on this pandemic as Todd, as you both are quite different people, and I respect that. But Todd does seem appropriate at least to raise his questions, asking if the policies that the administration is putting forward to protect our students, which is always the goal, are fully justified in context of what other people who are very smart at doing their jobs as well and have the same goal of keeping people alive are doing. So.
Yeah, I certainly don't have an issue with the discussion, but I do want us to respect the role of the board and respect the role of our athletic director and our president and our vice president and all of the professionals that have worked hard to keep our athletes safe. And
Which
so
is why I'm interested in their, sorry to interrupt, but I'm interested in their perspective too on, because when we kill a season, even though they might get an additional year, it impacts their overall career. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to.
No, it's a good point. Again, people can't put their lives on hold and say, well, I'll just come back for another year. I mean, they did that for the spring sports last year, and they've talked about this year. That's why some of the football teams, I mean, look at my Air Force Academy team. They basically took the season off. They're going to play Army this weekend. And at the end of the day, because the Mountain West came back, I think they're going to end up with 6 games. So, you know, but some of the guys had already stepped out for the season and others. So it's a goofy deal, and it has larger impact. And I am questioning the wisdom. I'm not questioning the effort, but I'm questioning the wisdom. I don't think it's appropriate to lump the wrestling with the rest of the athletic programs. Everything else is in whack, and wrestling is not. And I got to believe the professionals and the coaches and our trainers, gosh, Christy, are they less competent than the other colleges around the country and even our local high schools? I mean, how can high school wrestle, but our college can't? I mean, answer me that question. If everybody's so smart and we got all these experts, how is it that high school can do it, but college can't?
I would never suggest that they're not competent. I think that Graydon's presentation was excellent, and it's good conversation, but I'm not sure where you're going with this. I'm just cautious.
Where I'm going is I want them to let wrestling compete with their season as designated by their governing body, the NJCAA. And as far as the NWAC, it is what it is, and we have to get there. And that's just, it's what it is. We're going to play with the NWAC. I guess we got to do what the NWAC says. But wrestling is not NWAC. So I guess that's my point. So we've probably beaten this to death. It's probably time to be done.
I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
When I was talking about the pods and when they're stuck together, I asked if they were all allowed to train together, whether it be the mat and the fields. It seems like wrestling was left out in that answer to that question.
Bobby, excuse me, Trustee McKenzie, I'm going to let Bobby respond to that as it related to different programs and coaches and how they manage theirs.
Yeah, in my discussion with Coach Sabali throughout the fall and with our college protocols and how we did it, we used this fall to spend the majority of our time with strength and conditioning and weight training. So yes, we did not compete in pods with our wrestling program this fall.
On the mat, not compete, as in practice, even wrestle, like as in dedicated partners?
No, we did
None
not.
of that.
No, we did not.
And how about the gym facilities? Or when you might have, I don't know, did you stagger people to do basketball in the gym? Were they allowed to use all the gym?
We actually, our practice times were staggered. Our men's basketball program went from 8 to 11. I believe volleyball went from 11 to 2. Women's basketball went from 2 to 5. Wrestling would use, they would come in and out. Yeah, so we had definite staggered times. We were sanitation and cleaning and all the protocols that we had to follow. So yes, we did have staggered times.
And the showering rooms and everything they were allowed to use?
Nope, we did not. They were not allowed to use showers. When they came to the gym, they were informed to come prepared with their mask. We checked with them. They had done a healthy roster throughout the day. The coaches checked them for the temperature, asked if they were good, and then they came in and competed through. And then when they finished, they returned out, and locker rooms, because of such a confined space, locker rooms were not available.
Is that similar protocol to high schools?
I'm not sure if it is.
Trustee McKenzie, and I'm not certain either. I know by definition, it's part of what I read through the NWAC guidelines as well. I would think that protocol, because of the close proximity, would carry through most programs.
So do I need a vote to get the SALT feedback? It is, I would, it's anonymous representation, right? Or how are we going to follow up on that?
Can we make that request, or are you guys going to require me to have a vote?
I guess I want to, excuse me, I'm sorry, Trustee Banducci, Chair Banducci. What is it, Trustee McKenzie, what is it that you're asking to be done?
I am interested in the athletic students consensus. If they want to be let, well, for example, wrestling, if the protocols, the strategy in place, if they feel that it is meeting their needs as a wrestling team from their athletics student perspective.
Would it be fair to say, Greg, that what you want to know is, are the students willing and able and want to participate, or are any being coerced to participate against their will? In other words, I think the question is, do they want to compete or not? And if it's a problem, or if there's a hesitation, or if there's a concern, then we want to know about that. If they want to compete, we want to know about that. Would that be fair, Greg?
Well, I think it's fair to say that they are being allowed to be competed, but the protocols in place, if it's allowing them enough to compete or be prepared to compete, for, like you highlighted, for the wrestling team. I'm not saying it would change any protocols. The president's in charge, but I'm interested in soliciting feedback of the people that the policies, existing policies, are impacting.
I mean, it would be my, if I had to just answer the question right now without having asked a student a question, my guess is that most of them would like to be competing. Bobby Lee, I'm assuming that's feedback you've heard from students?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you were to ask,
they didn't come to North Idaho College to not be student athletes at the fullest what that label means. And I just want to just take just one step back here just for a second and just remind everybody, I start off my report tonight saying that when we started the fall semester, we were wondering if we would get through week one. Since March, daily, sometimes hourly, weekly, we were faced with all kinds of either lack of information or whatever that has made us have to be very thoughtful and tuned in completely in terms of thinking our way through many issues, student athletics being just one of them. So, I think Grade referenced Bobby saying, this is today. Well, this is today. Today, this is where the dates are. This is where we think things are going. I have concerns about NJCAA because there isn't any of that competition that doesn't require overnight travel. I am not confident that we have a way to do that safely. It's distance and it's overnight. The NJCAA has completely abdicated their responsibility, in my opinion, with setting up useful protocols and guidelines for intercollegiate athletics and institutions to follow. They are leaving these up to the institutions. By comparison, NWAC has done an absolutely thorough, you may disagree, and it may be more restrictive or whatever, but I have been incredibly impressed with the level of detail and thoughtfulness that they've put into their protocols. And I also want to just remind you that, and you may not know this, we offered in-person instruction this semester, which gave our students an opportunity to have some athletic experience in person, whether it's personal training, I've watched teams play out on the soccer field and whatnot, and I've seen athletes in the wellness center. There are a majority of schools in Washington and many in Oregon that went to a complete virtual online format this fall semester, and as a result, their student athletes have not had any experience, even close to what it's been at North Idaho College. So I just want to add my appreciation to Bobby Lee and the whole athletic department, coaches, trainers included, in how they adapted to the environment that we're in to provide the best possible experience we could for our student athletes, understanding that they're young people, and if we just unbridled them, they'd run right at that competition, despite everything we know that we ought not to be letting them do. So, yeah, Trustee McKenzie, we can do a pulse survey and ask some questions. I think I know what those answers are going to reveal to us. It's not necessarily going to change my approach, as you pointed out, or the college's response to how we're trying to manage their experience and do it safely in the context of COVID-19.
It's interesting as we watch everybody try to adapt to this and the different limitations that have been placed. Some of you may be aware or may not, but the Boise school districts just announced that they've opened up athletics, and so there are no longer any school districts in the state of Idaho that are withheld from athletics. So Boise folks seem to have decided they've figured it out enough so they can compete. So they've turned on their athletics down in the Boise school districts too. So that's the entire state of Idaho that's competing athletically right now. So
I guess, Trustee Banducci, I would say that the response to COVID-19 is, I think it's safe to say, been uneven across the country. Issues around it have been based on different points of view, to be sure. And I know that from my weekly meetings with local school superintendents, that the pressure that they're facing from parents has been intense, and that some of what you're seeing is certainly in response to that. I don't know that it's necessarily the right thing to be doing. So, we're gonna, obviously I don't have responsibility for those other schools or institutions. I only have responsibility for North Idaho College. And we're gonna continue to adapt and adjust and try to set this up in the best way we possibly can. If we can get, look, I want our students to be competing. We all do. Doing this in COVID-19 is not fun at all. But that's where we are right now. So I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
All right. Well, my last comment would be, it was interesting that you pointed out the pressure that parents can impart on the school districts. Kind of dovetails to some conversations earlier today, tonight, whatever, about the face of the college and who gets the comments and the role of the trustees as the elected officials. So the community at the college, yeah, you don't have the parents coming to you for the athletes like they do at the high school level. Instead, it's the community coming to the board and telling us, hey, we want you to be playing sports. And so kind of interesting parallel, but clearly not the same. All right. The last thing is, next to last thing is the board chair report. That's mine. It's been kind of a long day with the meetings that we've had. It's been a challenging year. It's going to be interesting to see the direction of our college and what it looks like. I looked at the last two President's Cabinet meetings from, I think it was the 24th of November and the 1st of December. Hopefully those dates are correct. And looking at our enrollment for the spring, so that quite interesting. I know we didn't talk at all about enrollment tonight. Maybe that was something we should have had, was a quick update on where we think we are with the convocation that's scheduled the first week of January. But the numbers, at least from what I saw, didn't look so great. So maybe those have improved since from those metrics that I saw. But so I guess I'd be curious to have updates on those and see where we're at as we get into this spring semester. I don't think it's just us. I think from what I understood, seeing the national statistics, it's a challenge everywhere. So I'd like to just keep an eye on where we're at, and if you guys would keep us informed as a board, I know I'd appreciate it. You know, this is a college that represents the community. It's a community college, and a lot of folks out there want to see the college reflect the community. And we live in North Idaho, and it's a fairly traditional conservative community here in the north, and with their values and ideals and the rest. And I think they just want to see our college reflect that. And I know for myself, and I'm guessing for Greg and Michael, there was a lot of feedback and a lot of input for a few months there while we were on the campaign trail and going through this election. And there was a lot of positives that we have here going at this college, and it is a gem, but there are certainly some things we can improve upon in some areas that will continue to work. And I guess we're going to be a pretty engaged board, so I guess everybody should just expect that, because we do take it serious and we do care. And as Greg said, we're going to ask questions and we're going to research, and we want information, and we want the community to know that we are available to them as trustees and they can approach us. And I love to hear the good things and the bad things. I'm okay either way. We'll thank you for the good things, and we'll try to work on the bad things if we can. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say tonight. Are there any remarks for the good of the order from anyone?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to respond. Well, what you just said about the community, I think that's very important. And I would suggest that I too am on the board. You didn't mention me, but I am on the board. Mr. Howard's on the board. And we also represent
You
the
guys weren't
community.
running for election, Christy. You guys weren't running for election. That's why I said on the campaign trail. So I wasn't trying to exclude you that way.
Okay. Anyhow, I think our college has done a wonderful job of representing the community. We have a long history of that. And I would also say that we have a very diverse community. And I would just also suggest that that's a community conversation. We're not a private institution. We're a public institution paid for with public dollars. And we are represent the entire community. So I don't know, when you're talking about a value system, Todd, that maybe you have decided on, I think we need to be careful and make sure we understand that we represent the entire community. But that's not my entire board comments. That's just in response to what you just said. What I wanted to update the board was about 3 years ago, we agreed to help pay for part of Memorial Field with the city. And this board gave $150,000 toward the renovations of Memorial Field. And what the city did, they've been really good partners through all of this. Our $150,000 didn't go very far on renovations. And you know, our girls softball team uses the field. But what they did do is they listened to Park and Rec Commission. I sit on the Park and Rec Commission. And we understood that NIC really needed locker rooms for our girls. And so initially that was going to be part of the remodel of the grandstands, and they were going to be located underneath the grandstands. But when construction didn't bear out, it wasn't feasible. And so what the city did on their own accord was they, across the street from Memorial Field, there was an old brick restroom. And they raised that last summer and made plans to purchase one of those concrete buildings that it's an all-in-one building. And within that, they bore the cost of making locker rooms for our female athletes that will be permanent. And those will just be for NIC. I think that I lost those guys. Okay. Oh, okay. I guess I'm out.
Christy, you're good.
Am I still here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that the building's finally coming to fruition. I think it might have got set up today. And one of the other conditions were that we would be able to display our cardinal and North Idaho College on the side of Memorial building, the grandstand building, forever, as basically a symbol of NIC and of our home there. And so those things are in process. Laura's team's working on that, but they have some great designs that they've picked. But I just wanted to let the rest of the trustees know that as of hopefully today, that building got delivered on site, and that will be useful to our female athletes. That's it.
I just have one remarks too, with regards to athletics too, and that's awesome for the women's athletics. That's great news. Thank you, Christy. This is not an easy task, and we had a lot of unknowns at the beginning of this semester, and while still other institutions had those same unknowns, choosing different policies. It seems like the wrestlers were held back from meeting and training more than just strength conditioning for the full fall semester. And I'm interested in hearing their perspective, especially in context of other people making similar tough choices in the same area under the same scenarios. So that's all I got to say.
Hey, and Christy, I feel compelled to just point one thing out because you were questioning kind of what I said. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. We're a very giving community. We just got done with the Festival of Trees. We got a briefing today from Aznic talking about St. Aznic. And so one of the values I will share that I believe is part of our community is giving and generosity. And clearly that's a place where an example is given tonight of where the college does reflect the community. I don't know how many families St. Aznic would be helping. I'd be curious to know if we have any idea how many we're actually touching. So I don't think we need to ascribe anything beyond just the basic things of human dignity and the things that are all part of that with the people. So that's the only place I was going. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. We have a motion and a second to adjourn.
Oh, I second.
All right. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.